sit there and think that to come to a creation evolution debate, him play him in a video and be like, oh, I just debunked evolution with this 10-minute video of refuted talking points. It's he's not to be taken seriously at this point. Someone needs to point out to him it looks bad and it is bad. So that's my thoughts.
I heard tectonic brought up as just a fish. I've got something to sound.
It's not your turn, buddy.
Oh, sorry. Then who's next?
Hey, John.
Hey, Dan.
I didn't get to see most of the debate. But I'm sorry. Did you say something?
Real quick. So, to reiterate the rules for everybody who's coming in, we first go in order. People need to share their thoughts about the debate, and then once we've done that, we can go more into general discussion, and then if new people join, then we can stop, let them share their thoughts, and then we'll go back to discussion. Before we do that, George Bond does a super chat. Says a challenge for Jackson Wheat: make a video of all the wrong predictions Evos have made. That's a very good point. It's like, well, let's only do the ones that are right, therefore we're 100% true. We could have made a whole bunch that were totally wrong, but we'll just like brush those under the carpet. And then be like, well, if the opposite side didn't make 100% correct, wasn't 100% correct on all their predictions, therefore all of their predictions are false or didn't exist. The other part that cracked me up about this, I'll share my thoughts later. Okay, Dan, your turn, then Bubblegum, then Mark Reid. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you.
On that same point, I call that kind of science where you make a million predictions and hope a few of them are right, and then you emphasize those predictions. The Jeannie Dixon science. I did that the other night. I don't think anybody caught it, but that's what she did. She'd make a lot of predictions, and once in a while she'd get one right, and that's all you heard about. I didn't get to see most of the debate. I was away, but one part I did like, well, actually, it got a little boring after a while, was when T-Rock was talking about Russell Humphrey's prediction on the magnetism. That was a very stunning prediction that he made, because I think where TJump couldn't get his point across was that the evolutionists assumed that there would be no magnetism, if I recall correctly. And when Humphreys predicted, well, the magnetism will be here, he just really was totally opposite of all the evolutionary predictions. But anyway, TJump just couldn't understand that. T-Rock tried to explain it over and over again. It got a little funny, but then after a while it got sort of boring. One other point, I think Russell Humphrey extended that prediction to a later satellite. Before a later satellite left, they went to the same area. I don't remember which planet, but he made a second prediction. He said it'll be around here. Sure enough, it was right around that point he met that prediction he made. Anyway, thanks, John.
I appreciate it. That's a great point. And yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing that whole deal. That was cracking me up listening to it. I was like, how many times does he have to explain this? And I think what was really sticking out to me was TJump wasn't getting it because its foundation was not naturalistic, like if the starting point, right? And I don't think he has the ability to compute an extrapolation with anything other than like conventional paradigm alert. Oh my God, what's happening? Can't understand. But anyway, all right, Bubblegum, you're up next. We'll share your thoughts.
Bubblegum in the private chat said that.
Let go, Mark first. I gotta fix something over here.
Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Cheers, Bubblegum. I actually, for a start, I do agree with you with doing a video as an intro. I think it's incredibly lazy. I think that if you allow one person to do an intro video, then you have to allow everybody, whether that be flat earthers or Bigfooters or whatever, and then everybody can just grab whatever they want off the internet and say, hey, that's my presentation. I think that's pretty bad, just for a start. Probably the weirdest thing I heard tonight from T-Rock was that the moon causes erosion. It was just crazy, and it said that the moon causes dirt to lift up kind of thing. He didn't seem to understand accretion disks and sort of want to misrepresent the sort of stellar formation and the planetary formation model. A lot of his stuff was just misunderstandings of the actual science. Now, I just want to quickly say Tiktaalik wasn't just a fish. It was a fish that could actually walk around on land. It had stiffened fins that allowed it to walk on land, so it's not really just a fish. It's a land fish, which is awesome. Yeah, and I'll leave it there, and I'm very happy to get into the open discussion. It should be great.
All right, appreciate it.
Yeah, sorry.
Bubblegum, are you back? Bubblegum must be off.
Just a second. I gotta do something real fast.
Okay, well, real quick, while you're doing that, ladies and gentlemen, I finally remembered tonight to actually turn on the must be a subscriber to chat function. I keep forgetting to do this. It's only for 5 minutes. I'm not one of those jerks that makes you like have been a sub forever in order to chat, but I also keep forgetting to do this. So if you're wondering why you are not being able to chat right now, it's because you got to be a sub for at least 5 minutes. So click that sub button, and while you're doing it, click that like button so we can boost us up in the YouTube algorithm and get a whole bunch of new people in here to join the conversation. Bubblegum, are you ready? If not, Godzilla Freak just joined us and he can share his thoughts. Bubblegum, okay, Bubblegum's also on pause. Godzilla, what's up, man? Welcome to the stream. What'd you think about tonight's debate? Godzilla, if you're talking, I'm not hearing you.
Okay, is it better now?
There you go. Yep, here
There
you
you
go.
go. I have to change the mic. I haven't been on for a while. I think it was an interesting debate. The start was definitely something. I mean, TJump's just the type of person who would put a video as his opening, because normally his openings, he doesn't think them out at all. If you watch some of his debates on MDD, he actually just like wings it for a few minutes and then passes it over. But I thought the debate itself was interesting. It went off in a lot more directions than I was expecting. And I like how T-Rock sort of just starts merging different arguments together and forming sort of new ideas by combining them. I find that very neat. Yeah.
Anything else stick out to you, or was, you yield the floor?
Yeah, I'll yield. We can get Kevin to say something or see if Bubblegum's back. Yeah, he says he's back in the private.
All right, Bubblegum, you're up next, and then Kevin, go ahead.
Hey, I thought the debate was really kind of boring. It wasn't on topic. But I think it's funny because, like, I'm not sure if you've seen Modern Day Debate's last debate. And TJump is, like, becoming even more belligerent and childish in every debate. James from Modern Day Debate literally had to give him a dad talk and tell him, hey, I have to let the other person talk. And TJump said, no, that's not fair.
I was watching TJump versus Haas a bit ago. It was interesting.
That debate was rather interesting. I was pretty blown away at that. I know exact point you were talking about. And what's really funny to me is there have been, I forget the atheist, like Dark Messiah or something, did a little short clip acting like somehow Daniel was the one being unreasonable. And I was just cracking up. I'm like, what am I watching right now? How are you coming to the conclusion that TJump refusing to keep his mouth shut for 2 minutes and then do a rebuttal?
I didn't see that one. Was that TJump and Daniel Hikachu? Was that Hikachu?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll watch it.
Oh yeah, TJump like goes into full meltdown at that point. It was pretty crazy.
James had to step in and do like a literal dad talk. Like, hey, time for me to be.
It's like TJump. This is how debates have been forever. Like, you just let your opponent finish a sentence, and then you respond. It was bad. We may have to. So, hey, somebody and Bubblegum, if you know where it is, find the timestamp for that, and we may have to play that. Okay. Up next is, let's see, we got Kevin, and then Steve has joined us. So, Kevin, what's up, man? Welcome to the stream. What are your thoughts on tonight's debate?
Hey, John, Donnie, Godzilla, how you guys doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well.
Yeah, I think TJump is an arrogant, smug, demonic scumbag. And I think any atheist is a brain-dead moron. Bubblegum Gum, you're a disgusting, filthy polytheist. And Ace Philosophy, you're a filthy heretic Unitarian. Why don't you go crawl back in the dirt?
Okay, okay, Kevin, let's keep this on
Wow.
the debate.
Listen to that Christian brotherly love, Kevin.
You're not my brother. You're a twofold child of hell.
Guy, okay.
Wow.
I didn't say I was. I just
don't
said how loving you
don't
are.
mute everybody. I'm muting you guys. Like, man, I tell you what, StreamYard needs a blanket mute button. I just need to be like mute room button. Okay, Kevin, I'll let you talk again, but this is about the debate, not your personal feelings about everybody in the room. So go ahead. What are your thoughts about tonight's debate?
Well, I don't really enjoy listening to TJump too much because he's really arrogant. You can't really talk to him. So no, I was in favor of T-Rock.
All right. Anything about the debate stick out to you?
No, I listened to like the first 30 minutes and then I turned it off.
Well, here's what I have to say. I think, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, we can now confirm that at the 26-minute mark, it's actually for the 25-45 mark, we officially have made it. Oh, whoops, wrong one. We have officially made it to dumpster fire. It happened 25 minutes. I don't know if it's a new record, but it's pretty close to the last one. But okay, up next is Steven. What's up, Steven? Welcome to the stream. How you doing? And welcome to the conversation. And what are your thoughts about tonight's debate?
Steven Tibet, good to see you, brother.
Yeah, one of these days, Donnie, you're going to do it with an American accent instead of your Canadian one.
Steven Tibbets. There, I got it.
Yes.
There we go. See,
You'll forget it. You'll forget it every time. Accent the first syllable, not the second. Well, for the most part, it looked like I was watching a debate I'd already seen before in the opening because, like you said, he reused the same thing, and I thought that was kind of cheap. But somebody was in the side chat screaming about how Donnie and T-Rock were trying to cheat by not allowing him to play the video. Evidently, they didn't understand that he'd already done that on a previous debate. But I wasn't really that impressed with the argument at all because it wasn't him making the arguments.
Yeah, setting the format is cheating, actually. Okay, you're not allowed, as the moderator, to decide how the debate should be organized.
I don't know if
And
I'd
what
class.
platform should be allowed.
Sorry, go ahead. I don't know if I'd class it as cheating, but it isn't a good look for you when you do it. You've just gone to the internet and gotten a video instead of putting together a body of facts to present. It's not a good look. So I think it's sort of counterproductive if you are doing that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah,
Well,
my point is that the whole...
In defense of TJump, he probably was inspired by me, just because in the destruction of Godless Engineer, I recorded myself ahead of schedule to have a very streamlined 15-minute opening statement, and then I edited in Godless Engineer himself into the conversation, as well as a little interview segment of some people that were high-level academics who were directly contradicting his primary point. So maybe that's what happened. Maybe T-Jump was just so impressed with what I did that he decided to copy it and then just failed in the actual insertion of himself into it. And that may be what happened. My thoughts on the debate were, wow, that was an interesting dumpster fire of ridiculously. What was really fascinating to me, and so everybody knows, I've actually been listening to quite a few of T-Jump's streams this past couple weeks, and it's really been fascinating to me how he usually in those conversations with like PhDs and such, he starts off pretty good and they're having a good conversation, high level, intellectual back and forth, and then at some point it's like he flips a switch and goes into his juvenile mode, and the person he's talking with starts being like, what? That doesn't really make. I'm not following you anymore. That's not making any sense. And if you've ever taken the time to actually dive into T-Jump's moral model, it is weird. I mean, he admits that it's weird, but then it's really fascinating to listen to like PhD philosophers like try to like twist their brain into the mental pretzels that is TJump's worldview. And then, long story short, to me, if you start to realize the very fractured prism through which TJump is viewing existence, it kind of explains where some of these debates go. But that's a sidebar. Anyway, let's okay. Anybody else wants to join? The link is pinned in the side chat. Come on in. We'll stop talking and let you in. Till then, let's do a little bit of open conversation. Donnie, why don't you start us off with a topic, and then we can discuss stuff, and then we can go in round robin and into more conversation.
By the way, I linked the video on the.
Yeah, I see it. I'm about to pull it up. Okay, Donnie must be off getting his caffeine coffee IV.
Yeah, probably.
Jabbed in there.
Yeah, good idea.
If anyone wants to toss in a subject, we can start talking, and then we'll go back in a round circle. Go ahead.
I just want to add the point that basically, like, the person hosting a debate has the authority to decide what kind of thing is allowed. So whether a video would be allowed, obviously the person hosting would get to decide if that's.
Yeah, kind of. I think that what would happen is you'd sort of have an agreement on rules or understand the rules beforehand, ideally, you know, and the moderator would leave it up to the people debating. But yeah, if you're sort of, you know, my channel doesn't do videos, yeah, you would expect the person debating to say, well, that's the rules of the debate. I agree for the most part.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do from now on, because I think the more the channel has grown, the more requests that come in almost daily, is I'll add that to like I've always kind of just assumed that debaters knew, you know, not to.
It's really trashy. You know, you kind of assume that somebody wouldn't do that because it's just, you know, you see flat earthers do it all the time, and it's just so bad. It just makes them look terrible. So you kind of assume that nobody would do that, right? It's just. Yeah, right. No, but yeah, if you just put a sort of advisor saying, hey, you know, please do not post videos as introductions, and you know.
Well, because technically what I could do is do one debate and then do an opening presentation and then just agree to, you know, 100 more debates in the next few months, and it'll be so easy. Every time it's my opening statement, I'll just play the one opening statement I did before.
Well,
I'll record one and then just play the same one all the time.
TJump does a lot of debates, like a lot of them. His numbers are up to something massive, but I don't think that's not an excuse. It's just, I think that's probably the reason, is because he's done that many, and maybe he feels like he's repeating himself. But as I said, it's not an excuse. When you're doing a debate, you do your introduction, present it. I think that any video introduction is just lazy, and also it looks bad for your side, is what my real problem is with it.
Yeah, Donnie, what you're missing is, see, he wouldn't even record himself doing an opening statement. He'll just find someone else's opening statement and play that instead.
Yeah, if you're gonna do your own video, I mean, I could see where there'd be some allowances for that, but just to outright rip somebody else's video off as your opener is very uncool.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the many things that really stuck out about the debate, right, that really just got me was TJump dismissing points that T-Rock was making, and then claiming that the polar opposite of what T-Rock was saying was true, right? And one of this is a little bit. The example I'm about to use is a little bit slightly different than that. But you guys remember when he was talking about like, oh, the absolute minimum time for fossilization is 10,000 years, right?
Well, that is what the science says.
Well, okay. Actually, that comes from a website called Curious Meerkat. Okay, and the part that comes up on Google initially is this: fossils are defined as the remains or traces of organisms that died more than 10,000 years ago. Therefore, by definition, the minimum time it takes to make a fossil is 10,000 years. That's what shows up on Google, right?
Yeah.
But then, if you actually open up the web page and continue to read, it's followed by, but that is just an arbitrary line in the sand. It means very little in terms of the fossilization process.
Yeah, so the process is the same, no matter how the length of time it takes.
Mark, I'm not done yet. And then, if you like continue to do some more Googling, there was an article from, I believe, 2018 from Live Science that shows that scientists have been able to fossilize something in as short as a day. So it's like, well, if it can be done in a day, and from an observed perspective, number one, that just completely obliterates the whole, it's got to take at least 10,000 years. First off, so that's just a fact, right? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. From an observed empirical evidence perspective, that talking point is just obliterated. Secondarily, if you're saying that it must be something that died 10,000 years ago, that is not anything other than when the death happened. It does not substantiate when or how long the total fossilization process took. And since that was not observed, then you're making the vast majority of the assumption is just that, and in terms of how long the actual process must have taken. So
yeah, but what he said was that the length of time can vary significant depending on what kind of fossilization it is, or how much minerals are in the
absolutely
water.
Minimum, just like
it can be minimum 10,000 years, but
minimum
length of time can
minimum 10,000
vary.
years.
Yeah,
so listen to the same debate. Silence.
So when you're talking about like something says that the length of time doesn't impact on the process, the process is the same.
I'm talking. Did
come on?
Did everybody in the debate hear TJump make the direct assertion that it was 10,000 years minimum?
Yep.
Here's what you have to realize though, LPP, okay? TJump does not read past like the first line of anything he reads.
I know, that's the point I was making. Okay, now, Mark, if you would like to respond,
sure,
go ahead, but just don't overtalk people. It's really freaking obnoxious. That's why you get muted. If you don't get muted, wait your turn, okay?
To be fair to Mark, it sounded like he stopped. I also thought
I thought you'd stopped and then you sort of just jumped in over the top of me. That's kind of funny. I'm sorry. Okay, so where was I?
Just to be a dick, let's meet you again. Okay, so Mark, we're gonna start things off on a foundation tonight. Okay, let's try to be calm. Let's try to be calm this evening. Okay, you overtalk everybody, people in almost every stream I've ever seen you in. Okay, so try very hard to control yourself this evening. Okay. And because I don't really like to do it. It's really annoying. I don't like to have to do it. And you get so butthurt about it that it's just kind of obnoxious. So let's just be normal tonight and not overtalk everybody. Go ahead.
No, I don't think you want to do it. I kind of think you need to do it, but, that's aside the point. Where was I? Oh, yes, the fossilization. When they say... Well, there you are, ladies and gentlemen. Kicked already, and didn't even get to say what I got to say, which is hilarious.
So, Mark, you come back. You ever experience that in any? You can come back if he wants to. Did you ever play sports? He's not banned. He just needs to know he's got to. Whoever's making a bunch of noise in the background, mute yourself, please. Did you ever play sports, Bubblegum?
No, I just work out. I don't do sports.
Have you never played sports in your entire life?
Well, yeah, but in high school. But after that, I just lift weights.
Okay, so in high school, if you were being a jackass, you ever play basketball? What sport did you play?
Volleyball, dodgeball.
Dodgeball's a sport.
John, tell Andrew to join.
It's the most fun sport.
Fusion with him.
Okay, for the people who played sports, if you were if the coach told you to do something and then you did the exact opposite, very often they would yank you and sit you on the bench, and then be like, "Okay, are you gonna behave yourself and follow the rules this time? Do what I tell you?" And then if you say, "Yes, coach, I will," they let you back in and play. Okay, so in this context, on my stream, the panel is the floor, and I'm the coach. So I let you get away with a lot of stuff generally because I like dumpster fires. I let people go with a lot of stuff. But when I tell you do not do X and then you do X, I'm going to yank you and onto the bench or to the side chat, whichever context you want to put it into. So anyway, let's continue. Let's get off of this. We can get into additional conversation. Mark is backstage. I'm about to let him in. Mark, when you come in, you are not allowed to talk. I will tell you when you're allowed to talk and we'll give you an opportunity. You can raise your hand if you want to. And let's see if you can behave. And if you can, then we'll let you get into more open dialogue.
All right. I just wanted to add another point to what you were saying about fossilization, which is basically that sort of the observable thing is the mechanistic process of fossilization, which we can know is very quick. But on the website, it'll still say it takes 10,000 years because they think that the geologic column's 100% true. So they think that, like, from a historical level, it must have taken 10,000 years in nature, even if mechanistically it can go way faster than that.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Okay, Mark has raised his hand. Mark's going to get a chance to talk. Mark, I'm taking you off mute. Go ahead.
I think you're on mute, man.
I don't have him muted. He must have muted.
Extra mute. Yeah, yes, my bad. So what I was trying to say is that fossilization can take a variable amount of time due to the things that I mentioned. One of the clearest indications that fossilization takes longer than what you're saying is that we don't have any fossils of modern humans, even though we kind of cover the Earth. Fossils don't form of very modern animals. They only form of animals above a certain time. And there's multiple different types of fossilization. So when they're sort of saying 10,000 years is the earliest fossils we have, but the process doesn't change how long it is, it doesn't mean that it's saying that, oh, it doesn't take 10,000 years, because that's not what it's saying. That's not what you read out.
Okay.
Yes, that's sort of the point I was making, right? Where the historical process, I guess you could argue, takes 10,000 years, even if it contradicts the mechanistic process.
What do you mean by historical process of fossils?
Or sort of like, so basically the point that, like, the fossils which do exist are dated to be 10,000 years, rather than that the process actually takes 10,000 years. And
yes,
so
yes.
It's a matter of historical fact rather than mechanical fact.
Right. So that's the whole point of what I was reading earlier. Quote: fossils are defined as the remains or traces of organisms that died more than 10,000 years ago. That's the operative words, right? It died more than 10,000 years ago. Doesn't mean that it actually took that long for the freaking bone to turn to rock. Is the whole point of this big one.
Even if it is the case that all fossils are more than 10,000 years old, which I don't believe in, but even if that's the case, it still does not mean that the process actually takes 10,000 years.
Right. Okay, real quick, thank you, Bubblegum, for getting this. I'm actually going to go back a couple seconds before what you recommended, but this is from the debate the other night where TJump gets the daddy talk from James over on MDD. It was pretty funny. But this whole thing right before is cracking me up too.
Amongst atheists that Picasso is the best 20th century painter. There's no consensus on those kinds of aesthetic claims. Is Picasso the greatest artist? Is Harry Potter the best work of literature? On the basis of a certain reasoning or a certain ideology that is being... And there's no physical reality that exists because it's all just a figment of my imagination. A solipsist would be very consistent in that definition. But this is not the definition of skepticism that I have used in my introductory statement. The reason is that there is a lot of blind following of the dominant political ideology. In the same way that 60% of atheists, or 60% of the Chinese population is atheists. Those atheists are fully on board with Chinese nationalism. Is that because these atheists are free thinkers, or is it because they are under political domination? Or
I'm gonna be clear on this. If he says Tom said and then something I didn't say, I'm gonna say I didn't say that.
What is the difference between 60 seconds? You can correct him. You'll have 2 minutes to correct him. We just got to give him another 60 seconds.
I'm telling you, I'm gonna do this.
Dude,
This is non-negotiable.
I mean, you can't let someone talk because you
like,
can't follow a thread of thought.
I need you to just give him the same amount of time that you were given. If you think that he's
That's not fair.
Absolutely address it in the following statement. You can do that after he's 60 seconds from done. It's how debate has been done, like, for decades, where people would have time statements. It's how they typically do them still. It is not unreasonable. You'll have as much time as you need to rebut him, but I got to give him the same amount of time you just had.
That's fine, but I'm still gonna, if he directly lies about something I said, I'm gonna stop him and say, no, I didn't say that. Sure.
Why don't you show respect to someone who agreed to debate you?
I am, by correcting your mistakes
No,
so that
you
can
can
make the
be.
correct
You
point.
can show respect by shutting your mouth when someone else is
No,
talking.
no,
according
I
to the
can-
moderator.
If
The
you make
moderator
an
is telling you
ignorant
to shut
mistake,
up. He has to explain to you in debate form.
No.
I do want to make sure that everybody hears both of you. And so if we just break it into 60 seconds, 10 minutes.
I'm just ignoring you. I need an answer to the question. I'm focused on the question. The question is, he's claiming.
I know that, but
I don't want to get distracted by irrelevancies. I need the answer to the question. This is the entire point of the debate.
At the same time, it is reasonable for him to be concerned about being interrupted too much. Just the same way that you wouldn't want to be interrupted too much.
I'm not even saying anything. I'm asking questions. So I'm making 0 points.
When I give an answer, you interrupt because
it's not answering the question I'm asking.
He summoned me was.
I'm asking a question. And if you answer a different question,
agree of that.
So here's the question.
Here's like what? Well, let's just let Daniel finish the last point that he was making, and then we'll come back to you for that question. This one from Bubblegum Gun says, if the Harry Potter book gave you cancer, that would be a utilitarian fact. Books don't give you disease. Sexual promiscuity can. Awful argument. TJump. You soy boy. I added the last one. Okay, so come on,
I
Tom.
don't understand the argument there. Like the argument.
Lol, I love that part.
The millions of people who aren't starving today.
I'm not even saying anything. I just asked a question.
I got to say, James is a really fair moderator. There's no question that he is one of the most reasonable and fair moderators out there. I don't think you could argue with that. I'd be hard pressed to find somebody in the YouTube sphere that does a more fair job than him. Oh, except for Donnie. I'm sorry, Donnie. I totally forgot about you up there. See, this is bad. This is really bad. So when you're cutting somebody off like he is to Daniel there, and just won't let him speak, right? It looks like he just can't let something out. It's like he's making himself look like he's getting rid of someone because he can't stand to hear what they say.
He's acting like a child, a literal child, and then James has been like a dad and literally give him a baby talk.
Well, I know that debates get fired up.
That old show.
Sorry, Godzilla, go for it.
Yeah, what was that old one called again? The SFT would know, like the non sequitur show. That's what it's called. Yeah. The moderators
that's
start, like ganging up on the debaters.
Is that
turns into like a 3v1?
Steve somebody? That was before my time. I don't remember that. Steve somebody. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, something like that. They would actually just start like helping one side of the debate against the other.
That's terrible. Yeah, no, that's not cool. That's not cool. But I think any time that you're trying to silence somebody, all it does is make you look like you don't have an answer for what they're saying. Look, TJump could have just let him finish, then said, "Hey, that is not what I actually said. You've totally misunderstood. Here is what I actually said." And it's incredible that that's what you got from what I said, because you're completely and utterly wrong. And it would have been far more impactful. It would have been far better. And it moves the conversation along. This just is counterproductive because you just look like TJump he looks insecure, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah. And he does it like in every debate. He's a sophist. He uses a lot of sophistry. I'm not sure if you've seen his debate against Duff Arenas.
I probably wouldn't agree with that. I think I caught some of that. Was that the TJump is an idiot debate?
Yeah, he lost that real bad.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure he did.
He even admitted at the end, and like.
Well,
it was like a whole after show.
Yeah, I think he jokingly said that he was an idiot for going into that debate and talking to Darth Arianis in the first place. So he, he is kind of thing. But
in the beginning, he admitted it all cheeky, like, oh yeah, I'm an idiot, and like I'll take my $50 and go. But later on, it was like, yeah, I am an idiot.
Look, TJump is a good debater. He's really good. I don't think anybody can sit opposite him.
His fans think he's a good debater, but his fans are just rabid, even dumber than him.
I don't know if you've actually sat opposite him and actually debated him.
I have, and he muted me through the whole debate.
Was that the one on which one was that?
Fields. His whole like.
Oh, was that
worldview
the one
like,
where you said quantum fields weren't physical?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, Bubbles.
He couldn't get the question. Because when I asked him,
I'm sorry, mate, but that was that was terrible. I'm really sorry, but I think you lost that one so bad. Probably the worst I've ever seen.
Okay. Are quantum fields physical, Mark?
Yes.
Do you think they're physical? Okay. When I asked TJump, provide me a cup of field. What do you think I meant by that question?
Well, we have hadron colliders, right? Quantum fields
provided this provided fluctuations. They never provided a physical quantity of the field, and that's the whole point of my question. If you're gonna say the field is physical, provide a physical quantity.
So
nobody's ever done that.
How do we smash quantum particles together if it's not physical?
I think a field's just an abstract concept we use to describe something.
Someone said it was abstract, but nobody's provided a physical quantity, and nor could you.
Well, I'm not that big on field theory, but I know the physicists that study it and know all about field theory say that the field is physical. It's
none of them do. None of them has ever said they're
physical quarks that are part of quantum mechanics.
They'll say particles arise from the fluctuations of the field, but the field in and of themselves are not physical.
Yeah, they still do say it's... Anyway, we're totally off topic, by the way, so I'd maybe bring it back to the debate, like creation and evolution.
Yeah, okay, we can break that.
Yeah, sorry. I can discuss with you later, Bubbles. If you want to debate me on it, I'm happy to. But, we're going to have to get on somewhere other than modern day debate, because I have no power over that.
Even Church of Entropy agree with me that I was right, and then TJump self-owned because TJump doesn't know physics. Church of Entropy, while we're on the opposite sides, she actually knows her stuff.
Okay, well, I mean, I can talk to Jen. That's fine.
Yeah, even though she is crazy, she, in fairness to her, she does have a degree in physics.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is, but
she's
like a Panthea's cat lady.
Oh, that's a bit harsh, Bubbles.
She is quite the character. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, come on, everyone loves Jen. Come on, she's really nice.
She's an interesting character. I mean, she hates me for some reason, even though we had a very interesting conversation. Initially, she liked me. We were awesome, and then it went down a crazy rabbit hole one night, and wow, it was pretty nuts. But in general, she's okay. Some of her debates have been fascinating. I think when she's not super high, she's pretty good.
Wow,
when she gets stoned,
you're so nice and cordial. Like,
she
I can't imagine why.
That would explain a lot.
I know. It's
have you ever seen her on camera? It's like full scale. Like, she looks like she's living in I don't even know how to describe it. Like, she looks like it's something that Bob Marley must have built.
I'm not going to comment on anybody's, what anybody's doing. I think it's none of my business.
It's almost guaranteed that she is tripping balls or something in there. Like, guaranteed. Okay, so the people that want to join, link is pinned in the side chat. Get in here. We'll stop the conversation. You can share your thoughts about the debate. And you can jump into the conversation. For folks who want to come in, who aren't in front of their computer, that's not an excuse. The beauty of StreamYard, you can do it on your phone. So just click that link, get in here. You don't have to be on camera. Just have to have your microphone activated, and I can let you in, and we can get into additional conversation. Now, before we go on, I've gotten a message from George who says that timestamps prove Mark's denial about DNA being able to repair itself is true.
Yeah, he sent me that message as well. I asked for the timestamp and he never got back to me. So do you have the timestamp there so I can look into it?
So I just got it. I'm going to pull it up.
Okay.
I know SFT's saying in side chat that when he gets back, he wants to talk about some of the arguments from Jackson's opening, but I don't know when he's actually going to get back from his coffee injection.
Well, you never know how long the guy's going to take. Because I think what happens is he goes to see his wife, and then she's like, well, I could inject you with this needle, or you could come and get in bed with me. And he's like, I guess I might get adrenaline rush. You know, it might work. So I think that's what happens. And then when he gets done, he's about to fall asleep, and then she sticks him with the needle. That's why it takes him like an hour to get back. Okay. So George says I did send it to you.
Yeah, no, I see where he said that. I responded, I never got it. We were talking in one of the comments of one of my... Oh, no, of the one on Standing for Truth, I think, or perhaps on your channel. Anyway, we were talking in comments somewhere, and he said, you know, you lied and stuff. And I said, well, tell me the timestamp and I'll check it out. Because if I did say that, I was certainly wrong. But as far as I can remember, I don't remember saying that at all. I don't even remember talking about edites in that conversation. I don't think edites came up, so I don't know what he's talking about.
I think George was specifically referring to like DNA repairing itself. But we'll get to that. I'll play it now. I'm playing here in a second. Real quick. I forgot that Ray had done the super chat earlier. He says nobody has observed anything, let alone false formation. I think he's talking about evolution. So the time required is pure speculation. And then, and he says, left off 10,000 years. Okay, yep. No, it's a very, very good point. Very good point. We have not observed anything 10,000 years ago. That's true. It's all supposition and inference. Okay, let's see. Let me get these timestamps here. Okay, this is... Okay, which one is which? Okay, I think this is from the other night. Okay. All right, so... Tony versus Luca. Okay. So, share... Okay, let's see. Okay, so I think this is from when you said that no, but you had not said this. Okay, so all right, everybody go on mute real quick. Let's see what we got here. I know George was pretty upset about this.
Yeah, please. And
Right.
And Mark,
so Mark, I got a question for you. I heard through the grapevine that you were denying the existence of the editase proteins. Is that correct?
No.
Well, so you agree that they do exist?
Yeah. Why would I think they don't exist?
Well, I mean, last night you were arguing that they weren't, is what I was told.
No, I wasn't.
So you do think
I argued that mistakes in the genome are mutations and they're not necessarily fixed all the time. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, if you're talking about fixed as in like the population, we're talking about fixed. The word fixed here, this is another example of hyperliteralist disorder, I think. Because the term fixed in this context means being repaired.
Well, I never said that editase doesn't exist, but I said that there are mutations that are not fixed in the genome from generation to generation.
Okay,
Would you agree with that or not?
Okay, so you do concede.
Well, I asked you a question.
I started this whole thought process. You're trying to shift it. I'm getting very specific with you right now. Okay?
I'm just asking you
a question. Bro, every time we have conversations, you never want to actually get down in the dirty. You always try and shift things. So I will answer your question. Dude, I have already answered this exact question. So pay attention. I answered this exact question. Yes, I did. I literally did. Okay? Go on rewind. Okay, so that was from last night. Let's see what... Okay, so here, I think this is... Okay, I think I was asleep when this happened on the night before. Okay, yeah, this was like way after I was out. Okay. All right, let me share screen here. This other one. Okay. Okay, Matt and David. Okay, here we go.
The genetic code producing it. But what we've seen a ton of is retroviruses using integrate to make that cut, and that cut has long terminal repeats because of what the integrase does.
Now, I'm going to float a theory by you, Mark. You can take it however you like. The human body, the way that it was set up with the genetic code, has an enormous potential to repair itself. Now, in the process of repairing itself, it can swap genetic code.
I don't think DNA can repair itself. How would it? That seems weird. I don't. How would that happen? Like if you had DNA code, sort of, it happens that it does make mistakes. That's what mutation generally is.
Right, but it can also genetic code can repair itself, sort of like when you
molecular machines.
Like say you go to check a file and they give you that code to verify that a zipped file is actually I can't think of the term right now, but there's a code you can look at. Yeah, like a checksum. There's a checksum that's built into our genetic code, and if it doesn't match, I'm sure the human body probably has a way to sit there and
the problem
repair.
is the checksum doesn't repair it. It just tells you if it's been altered in some way. It doesn't actually go back and make it into what it used to be.
Well, it could if there were viruses in the human body that would take duplicates of correct code and insert it back over the damaged code.
I think you would have to demonstrate that does actually happen rather than just. Yeah. Okay.
So Mark, I heard you pretty adamantly say that it doesn't fix itself.
Yeah, so I was wrong on that, and I didn't remember editase, so I apologize.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, that's okay. If he had said editase and I'd be pointed towards that, I probably would have remembered that was a thing, but nobody mentioned editase and nobody sort of described to me sufficiently what was going on. I had in my head a completely, different mechanism there. I was wrong. I'm happy to admit that I'm wrong. I was wrong on that.
Well, I'm good at absorbing trivia, but editase was not on my trivia list.
What?
I said I'm good at absorbing and remembering trivia, but the word editase was not on my trivia list. Sorry about that.
Look, no. That's not your fault. That's not your fault. I just, I think that I was wrong. I definitely was wrong. So I'm more than happy to admit that if I'm shown I'm wrong. And I did not get that timestamp to have a look at it, so I could not go back and have a look at it. So.
All right. Well, hey, and we got to give Mark credit for admitting he was wrong in that context. And it's fairness to him. Editase, I didn't hear editase mentioned, although they were being pretty clear about the fixing itself, which you denied. But fair enough. We'll let that drop. Mark admitted he was wrong, so let's not won't go any further. But yeah, George Main, editase is a DNA repair mechanism. I believe it's one of the endonucleases that. There's actually quite a few. For those of you in the audience who don't know, there's actually, I think it's over 50 different DNA repair proteins that actually go and fix specific types of damage and specific types of errors. And there's different ones that work when the errors are in specific times, right? And like whether it's like damage or errors during DNA replication versus transcription. Or just a general damage that's happened via radiation or whatever. There's a whole bunch of them. They go and fix specific types of damage, which is kind of interesting. And it's one of the things for me if you go and actually read some of the papers. And by the way, for all the atheists who think I'm making this stuff up, in my folder of shared papers for everybody, there's quite a few on the error correction codes in biological systems, and they have things, this is the checksum for this, and then this is the thing that goes and fixes it. And there's like direct comparisons to Hamming error correction codes and all sorts of stuff. If you ever take the time, or you're an information theory nerd like myself and find computation, all that stuff fascinating, go read some of those papers. It's very interesting. And the next time you hear atheists talk about how there is no information or it's not code, all these kind of things, well, just go read the papers and be like, how can you have a error correction code to fix something that is not a code? And then just ask yourself, anybody who makes that argument that is not the case, they must be either ignorant or they're living in denial. That there's no way around it, because it's very well established in the research. Anyway,
so
back to general conversation.
Yeah, the scientists say that evolved over time. So if it didn't evolve, what was the process that it came about?
It's the same thing. It's like asking which organ evolved first. Because, for example, what would you say, taking a human being, which organ evolved first from your perspective, Mark?
Which organ? Probably the skin, I would say. That's as the best of my knowledge. I mean, I can sort of say, hey, the heart probably evolved before the eye, for instance.
Yeah, but but you need nutrients to make the skin. So the skin needs a stomach.
Well, no.
So we're
not
Well,
if
this
it's a
argument's even better when
single-celled
you-
organism. A lot of organisms don't have a stomach. They still absorb
Well,
nutrients. A
well,
tree
we
doesn't have
never
a
see-
stomach.
We never see an organism that's just skin.
Well, I'm not saying it's just skin. I'm saying that
So-
it probably evolved from a very simple primitive organism that just absorbed nutrients around it, like, you know, some sort of thing. And then evolutionary advantage was to have some sort of harder skin-like, you know, sort of substance to protect it from things.
So just a skin organism that absorbs nutrients.
How did you get that from what I said? I didn't really
Well,
say that. I said it was probably a more simple version, and then it evolved at the same time to have more and more like modern things over an incredible amount of time, just billions of years.
Well, I'm trying to get as simple as we can.
What do you mean?
Okay, the first organism, was it just skin or did it have other organs?
The first organism. I don't know what the first organism is. You know, scientists say that it was some sort of very simple prokaryote. That wouldn't have had skin.
It does have a, what do you call it, a lipid
membrane.
Yeah,
membrane. That's the word I was trying to think of. Membrane. Thank you. Yeah. So it had a much simpler version that then has the potential to evolve into something else, but it's not skin, right? You would agree with that.
But even that membrane still needs to get its nutrients from like a digestive process. There needs to be something prior to it.
So a membrane doesn't stop things from going through it necessarily. It's not something that prevents anything from passing a membrane barrier.
Yeah, but it can't just let anything in.
Bubbles,
it also needs to regulate.
That's what the scientists say. So what is the other process that you're sort of putting forth here?
I'm trying to see what is the simplest organism, because it's a demonstration of it's what's the word we're looking for. I'm trying to use the rat trap analogy.
I can't help you, mate. I don't know what you're talking
So
about.
I think what Bubble I'm trying to say is basically that for an organism to survive,
irreducible complexity. That's the word.
Yeah, it needs.
Irreducible complexity was kind of shot out of the water.
That's the thing.
Behe
it hasn't
went and sort of brought bacterial flagellum as a, you know. I mean, that was Behe that brought bacterial flagellum as an example of irreducible complexity. But what they showed in, I think it was Kitzmiller versus Dover, it may have been another trial, the scientists showed that bacterial flagellum performed another task that was simpler, and that's one of the reason why it just sort of, you know, it wasn't irreducible.
For example, can we take any organ out of the human body and say it'll function?
Can we take any organ out of the human body and say it will function? No, I don't think so. I mean,
and that's the point of irreducible complexity. Because if you give like the human being a less developed intestine or a less developed brain, it doesn't function.
Yeah, what's your point?
The point is the irreducible complexity.
Yeah, that's not what irreducible complexity is, Bubbles. I'm not sure that you understand it. It's basically that
if we take an organ, if you agree, we can't take an organ out of a human being and have a functional human being.
Yes,
it's the same. It's the same as the trap analogy. You can't take a part out of the trap and still have a functional trap.
Yeah, that's because it's a trap. So when the human organs first evolved, we weren't human beings. So when the skin was first there, we weren't human beings. And that organism could have survived without, say, the membrane around it, or a heart, or lungs, or whatever, because it wasn't a human being, Bubbles.
Okay, so what? Okay, for example, what the thing I mean.
I'm trying to put in real quick, Bubbles. So get your thought together while I read this. So Ray says, without enzymes to break down food, it would take 100 years to digest its first meal. It's a great point. Thanks for super chat, Ray. And yes, that's an excellent point. I mean, people really kind of gloss over the catalytic effects of enzymes and how so many things that we just take for granted would not exist and would not occur without them being present. I mean, it's like, oh well, it's no big deal. It could have taken millions of years for this enzyme to form. Well, you need a hyper specific one to do X, and if you don't have it, then we observe organisms like they die. So if you don't have it, then what solved the problem? Oh well, there was just something else that did it. Okay, well what? And there's literally millions of these types of scenarios that we're talking about, and 99.9% of them don't even get recognized as problems, and the ones that do just get hand waved away. Oh well, there was something else, and it's just like completely gloss over this, because if you actually had to go down the rabbit hole of coming up with a evolutionary pathway for all these things, we'd never get anywhere ever, because it's like, oh cool, we only have to account for millions and millions of different things. Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Okay. So
Mark,
I'll just quickly say that I didn't say enzymes. I said I was asked the first organ, not enzymes. Enzymes have nothing to do with anything we're talking about.
Mark, I wasn't saying that in address to your point. I was addressing Ray's super chat. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So even Behe admitted that there is absolutely no peer-reviewed papers supporting his claims that molecular systems like the bacterial flagellum, blood-clotting cascade immune system are intelligently designed, and there's nothing that supports his argument that complex molecular structures are irreducibly complex. He said that under oath.
Okay.
Right, but I don't think Bubblegum's talking about Behe's idea with like a single structure. Rather, he's saying the entire organism, right, viewed as a whole, would have even higher levels of this problem.
So what I'm trying to get Mark to visualize is, for example, in human to human organ transplant, you can't just give a random person a random organ from another person. They have to have at least some this criteria for that compatibility.
Sure.
Blood types, etc. So I'm trying to get you to get me to visualize what pre-ancestor organ can fit into the human and work with it, because from what we observe, human to human organ transplant, that doesn't really work. So why would it work with ape ancestor?
Yeah, so if you're doing sorry, are you finished, Bubbles? I don't want to interrupt you, mate. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm done now.
Okay, so if you're doing an internal critique, the question is flawed, because, and the reason why, I'll explain why, it's because something doesn't have to fit into the modern human, it has to fit into what was there millions of years ago. Right, so I understand that you don't believe that. Don't get me wrong, Bubbles. I'm not saying you have to believe that. But if you're going to do an internal critique like that, you have to come at from the perspective of, being consistent with what you're critiquing.
This is the thing. From one transition to another, the organs are incompatible. So how do you have a compatible organ transition?
Well, they're not incompatible. You can put pig hearts in people. Did you know that?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think
I'll make sure I'm right, because I have been wrong before. 1 second.
No, I think they grow human cells in pig bodies, and then take those human grown organs and then implant into a human.
Comment. They often use pig heart valves or cow heart valves for repairs.
Each day we grow closer to Dr. Frankenstein. So true.
Yeah, well, here's one. Surgeons attached a pig kidney to a human and it worked. Would a kidney satisfy your criteria?
Mark, I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure that these are genetically modified pigs, if I remember correctly. Like they're growing things to be specifically compatible.
Oh,
yeah, because I remember
making some
possibly
modifications, because there's I might have brain freeze on a specific type of enzymes right now. They're restriction enzymes, I think is the term, but there's a whole family of proteins that their entire purpose is to make sure that
it doesn't get rejected.
That make sure alien DNA that gets makes its way in gets terminated, and there's specific markers in the host, if you will, DNA that those proteins recognize, and then if they're not in this other thing, it's a problem. It's one of the reasons in like transplants where there's so much suppression. What's actually happening in those suppression drugs you're taking is basically killing some of those restriction enzymes, so that it doesn't get obliterated, right? So what they're doing, I believe, I could be wrong on this, but I think I remember reading about this a couple years ago, that one of the things they're doing is trying to basically account for a lot of that stuff on the front end before they do the transplant. And
so they genetically modify.
So that basically it's like artificially stamping, if you will, the heart that's coming in, so that it's quote unquote recognized by the host as being native. I believe what they've been trying to pull off. It's still a hit or miss, but that's what they're working on.
But
John,
if that rejection mechanism is overcome, it does work, and I think that's my point to sort of Bubbles' point.
That's the thing.
Like,
that's like
it does
that's what they
work.
do with that's what they do with the human ears. They inject stem cells into pigs and grow the ear on the pig, but it's not something. It's not originally from the pig. They just inject it with human stem cells and grow it on the pig, cut it off, and put it back on the human.
Yeah, so that's why
it's intelligently designed.
Well, that doesn't
intelligent design.
That doesn't sort of make sense of why you need to fit a heart to a human. So if you have, like, internally critique, I realize you don't accept this, but if you have a really gradual change in the species over millions of years, the heart doesn't just suddenly pop in as, it's sort of a very, very small primate, say, and this is just an internal critique. It's a very, very small primate. You've got a little heart. It doesn't just bang grow to be a big one. It's a gradual growth of the organisms from generation to generation.
Okay, real quick, guys. So I found substantiation of the point I was making. So to make the pig heart used in the transplant, the company knocked out 3 pig genes that trigger attacks from the human immune system and added 6 human genes to help the body accept the organ. A final modification attempts to prevent the heart from responding to growth hormones, ensuring that organs from the 400 kilogram animals remain human-sized. Although the combination seems to have worked, it's unclear how many of the modifications are necessary. There's a lot more science needed in assessing each genetic modification, said Sykes, who adds that we need that information because the modifications also have the potential to be harmful in people. And they go on about some more stuff. But anyway,
sure. So why do they work?
Because they're modified.
I literally just read why they work.
Yeah, but I realize that the human body thinks that it is a alien organism and reject them, but once we overcome that, they work just fine. And this isn't saying, hey, this is really I'm just addressing Bubbles' thing of they're not like one another at all.
Mark, let's think about this. What I read was they had to edit 3 genes, or I think delete them, in the pig, and add 6 human genes at the same time, okay? So if you have to have all of these things simultaneously, and per your model, it's very, very minor changes. You don't have to have all these simultaneous things. And when you get into the, like, how can this gene go to that gene, right? From a co-adaptation, all that kind of stuff. Needing multiple simultaneous mutations, this has been studied at the wazoo. If you need multiple simultaneous mutations, you run into massive problems. This is a well-recognized problem. So if you don't just need a couple modifications, you need no less than 9 complete genes to be able to pull this off. Like, from a traditional evolutionary perspective, like, that's not even in the same stratosphere. Like, I mean, that's hilarious to think that would even be remotely construed as remotely plausible from a evolutionary perspective versus a necessity of intelligent agency.
Yeah, because it sounds to me you're saying the organism as a whole is evolving rather than one spot individually. And that's not supported by anything in evolution. The whole organism evolving at the same time.
Over the population, yeah, the whole, well, not the whole organism. There are certain traits to be passed on,
because now you're invoking multiple lucky mutations, not just one mutation in one spot, but multiple mutations all across the entire body.
If I could just finish, I think that 9 genes out of the sort of, you know, amount in the human body isn't a great deal. I'm just addressing Bubbles' claim that if they're so, they're very, very different, and it seems to me if you have you change 9 G's out of what, 20,000, 20-something thousand, that's not a huge change.
But the thing, it's a lot more than that what you're going to need, because I think what you're proposing is that the whole organism changes as a whole rather than one part here over time and one part over here over time. But nothing in evolution has ever said the whole organism as a whole evolves simultaneously.
Okay, so I think there's a misunderstanding of what you mean by you know, as a whole. So it depends the length of time that you're looking at. So over one to the next generation, the changes may be very slight. To, you know, one leg a bit different, whether it's neck taller, very, very small incremental changes. But over a long enough time, if you're having bits, it's like if you've got a boat and you're just changing one plank, or you're just fixing the wheel, or you're just doing one little bit, over the time it can look vastly different than when it started if you're changing absolutely everything, right?
But here's where the incompatibility arises.
What incompatibility?
For example, if you start changing one part at a time, one plank at a time for the boat, for example, if you make that plank smaller, you're just gonna have a hole in the boat. If you make that plank bigger, you're just gonna have a boat that's not gonna sail as well, and it's gonna be eliminated by evolution.
Exactly. You got it. So just
no, that's the thing.
Just say
you're not
no. You got it, Bubbles. So if that change means that it doesn't operate very well, it dies, and then the boats that perform better sail away and they survive.
No, but the thing, both of these mutations, both of these examples are examples of the boat getting worse.
What do you mean?
Okay, the plank getting bigger and the plank getting smaller of both examples of bad change.
Well, I mean, you can sort of replace parts of a boat and make it work better. Do you think that's not possible?
But that's the thing, replacing parts, now you're saying the whole thing just comes in.
Well, it's not
That's like saying scales just pop in.
I think you're getting nobody says distracted there, Bubbles. You know, it's like, I'm trying to think of an analogy that you'll understand, because nobody's sort of saying, hey, something just produces something that's radically different from itself, and that's what you seem to be suggesting to me, at least.
Well, I'm trying to visualize how the process of evolution actually looks like. For example,
I guess you would maybe go to archaeology for that.
If
there's any archaeological studies that can pinpoint 1 million years ago or however long, and then we could pinpoint the different skeletons, but there is no time past 6,000 years, or I guess it'd be like,
you mean paleontology,
4,000 BC, what we know as BC. But like any other ancient cultures, when archaeologists go into ancient cultures, they kind of like, they use their calendar systems to kind of like pontificate. We have years measured past 6,000 years. Look at this calendar of this Aborigines tribe, or or Amazonian tribe, wherever the case may be. But they didn't actually measure in years like Earth rotating around the sun. They measured in days, and so they would get instead of like 100,000 years, they were actually meaning 100,000 days from the night to the sun, because they didn't have the Anno Domini calendar when they measured time, and so a lot of archaeologists like to kind of pigeonhole those calendars into pontificating, oh, well, this proves that we have life past 6,000 years that can be measurable. Not necessarily, because there has only been archaeological findings in the pyramids that have time that goes back 6,000 years ago. Other than that, it's just Aborigines, and all other calendars line up to the Anno Domini.
I've got no idea what that's got to do with anything.
Right,
that's not generally how we date things. We usually use a various combination of radiometric dating. It's not just, hey, we look at local tribal records or something you're talking. I've got no idea what that's got to do with evolution or creation, to be honest with you.
Well, you're just speculating how old things are.
Hey guys, real quick, time out. So this is gonna be the last thing on the George versus Mark argument. So Mark, Georgia sends me this, and this is regarding the timestamp. He just sent me this, so it's from 19 hours ago.
I did not get that. I guarantee. Maybe because it had a link in it.
I don't know, but anyway, he just sent me that screenshot. So
I did not get that.
So George did send it to you, but whether or not you got notifications, I mean, let's be honest. In the era of the freaking like Gestapo, YouTube, artificial intelligence overlords that delete everybody's freaking comments and whatever, there's no telling. Sometimes I've had on my own channel, I've had comments, my own comments deleted by YouTube on my own freaking channel.
I got that too.
I know there's a word limit that I tell you about, because I've written some pretty big comments and suddenly they vanish, and I kind of worked out that it was the word count. Basically, it was too long, essentially. I also think that on some channels, your links, if it has a link in it, it'll just vanish. But the problem is they don't tell you. That's the problem.
Right. They don't tell you, and they also have started doing a thing where they like delete it for everybody else, but let you still see it.
Yeah.
And so people don't realize
that
it's been deleted. It's really obnoxious. I mean, YouTube, just stop being ridiculous, please. Come on. Anyway, okay, go ahead, guys.
If you've got an algorithm to delete these comments, you can have an algorithm to send a message to somebody about it. I don't get that.
Exactly.
I don't
Hey,
understand.
your comment has been deleted. That'd be nice.
Exactly. And it would take, how many lines of code?
Fix it later.
It would take like a dozen lines of code, if that. Terrible. Just lazy, but whatever. It's like...
it hasn't evolved yet.
Alright, one second. I'd like to sort of simplify...
Just wait, the AI will evolve. Sorry, Godzilla.
Yeah. So I think the point he's trying to get at is basically that quality or improvement happens in a non-linear fashion. What this means is that basically it's not the case that a bunch of bad changes will make a thing worse and that a bunch of good changes will make a thing better in this cumulative sense, but rather that to create a good change, it may actually require sort of many bad changes to culminate together. And that's sort of the point he's getting at with the ship analogy, right?
Yeah, very close. Because if all the mutations are just getting eliminated, then there is no evolution.
No, not all.
So he needs.
Sorry, that was not all.
Yeah, but if you're just having these if you're saying you're just having these specific spot only mutations, those are just going to get eliminated. Because you can't just have let's say a frog with one bigger arm or a fin, just one fin. It's going to get rid of that.
Generally not how it works, but just say the monkey does have a longer limb, for instance, and just say that its food source is it has to reach down holes. That longer limb may be an advantage to that monkey, and therefore it doesn't die as often as the monkeys that don't have that.
But as soon as when it's running away from predators, it's gonna be super slow and it's just gonna get eaten.
Well,
it's gonna get removed.
Well, if it's a detriment, it's gonna get eaten and removed. Bubbles, you're getting it.
Yeah, it's a detriment because we don't see monkeys with one bigger arm. But you see monkeys with one bigger arm? Of course not. It's a detriment.
If it's not a detriment, it'll be kept.
Yeah, but we don't see that, so it's clearly a detriment.
Well, we do.
We know we don't see monkeys with one bigger arm.
Well, No, we don't see that specifically, but there are beneficial mutations.
What's this thing? Even if there was like quote unquote beneficial, they're not beneficial. We're just saying again, mutations are beneficial or detrimental. There's this mutation which makes the monkey have a longer arm.
Right. So mutations are either beneficial or detrimental, usually depending on the environment or the circumstances the organism finds itself in. So, for instance, humans can sweat through our skin. It's a really good advantage in, say, a savanna, but it might not be a good advantage somewhere else. Or having heavier bones, for instance. If you're in a landlocked area and you don't have to swim, that's a beneficial mutation. But denser bones is a disadvantage if you're a water creature because it's harder to float.
But we're humans aren't aquatic.
Yeah.
We're not mermaids.
That's why we don't have particularly dense bones.
But I want to get to this example of this specific spot mutation, because you're saying this simultaneous beneficial mutations don't happen, in which the whole organism is evolving at the same time, which nobody in evolution would propose. That would be ridiculous, right?
The whole organism is evolving at the same time. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
For a whole bunch of mutations are happening simultaneously that are beneficial in changing, morphologically changing the organism.
Yeah, kind of unlikely. I mean, it's possible that like it develops a whole bunch of beneficial mutations, but I don't think that generally happens.
You would literally have to invoke a very supernatural event.
Oh, not really. Just it's very improbable.
You're talking about
it's incredibly.
You're talking about within one generation, a bunch of mutations happen, turned a chimp to a gorilla.
Yeah, I don't think that would happen.
So yeah, you agree that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean nobody's saying that would happen.
So I would say, how do we get from a chimp to a gorilla? Because you can't just have a chimp with one big gorilla arm.
Okay, I'll just clarify a little bit, and I realize you don't mean it this way, but when you say a chimp to a gorilla, it's kind of ridiculous, because a chimp won't. So when you have the phylogenetic tree, it's a common ancestor has branched out into both. A chimp won't suddenly jump over to become a gorilla. That doesn't happen. But a more primitive ape has maybe been small. One has gone in the way of being a little bit smarter, better climbing, more agile, and that was an advantage for it. The other one found an advantage where it was big and strong and sort of, lived deep in the forest where it didn't maybe need to hide so much. And that was an advantage for that one. So it split.
Well, those aren't going to cause any sort of morphological changes just because they can hide. Monkeys being clever, it's just those aren't going to cause any morphological changes. Just because a monkey's clever doesn't cause mutations.
What do you think camouflage is?
Okay,
so
do you think
camouflage is literally morphological changes so something can hide?
Hang on real quick, guys. So Ray gave another super chat. Thanks so much, Ray. Says the trouble with the ship analogy is a shipbuilder has foresight and intelligence. Evolution has neither. And I think that would also apply to
true.
Formation of camouflage usually necessitates.
Yeah, there's nothing within the code. Yeah, there's nothing within the code saying, "Hey, mutate for this specific environment."
No,
there's actually there's actually something in the code that says don't change so much.
Yeah.
There's a researcher named Eric Davidson from Caltech. He died a few years ago, maybe 2015, but he spent his entire career in embryology and also the control network that applies to it, the developmental gene control network. And he determined that any changes in the control network are catastrophic. I mean, they're just, he was talking about an early embryogenesis when this would be before the body plan is formed, because anything that happens after that doesn't affect the offspring. So he's talking about things that occur that would affect the offspring. Well, as it turns out, he says that not only is the control mechanism, the gene regulatory network, evolutionarily constrained, but he also says that embryos in a lineage develop in only one way. Now, if that's true, and he's went over this for his entire career, and he's a pretty smart guy, then how do they ever evolve into a different kind of organism? They can't.
Well, if you could send me the paper, has he done a paper on it? I mean, he's from Caltech.
Sure, yeah, I got it right in front of me here. It's called, well, I'll just give you the name. You look it up, very easy to find. But actually, there's two that you should go with. One by itself is called Evolutionary Bioscience as Regulatory Systems Biology. It's developmental biology, and it's by Eric H. Davidson. Now, he also did one with, I can't remember his first name, Irwin Davidson. And Irwin did a paper. It's called An Integrated View of Precambrian Eumetazoan Evolution. That's spelled EUMETAZOAN. That's in from both. One's from that one's from 210. The first one is from 211. And I'll tell you exactly what he says here. Just a short.
Is that Davidson as well? Is that Davidson as well?
No subcircuit functions are redundant with another. There's no redundancy, and that is why there is always an observable consequence if a DGRN, developmental gene network, if is subcircuit is interrupted. So if a subcircuit is interrupted, it's catastrophic. He said, since these consequences are always catastrophically bad, flexibility is minimal. And since the subcircuits are all interconnected, the whole network partakes of the quality that there is only one way for things to work. And indeed, the embryos of each species develop in only one way. That's from the first paper I mentioned, by Eric Davidson by himself. And again, that's called Evolutionary Bioscience and Regulatory Systems Biology, and it's in the journal Developmental Biology. Now, the second one is, again, it's called An Integrated View of Precambrian Eumetazoan Evolution, and that's in Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory Press. I'm not sure if they're public domain or whatever you call that, open access. I don't remember now. But the second one pretty much says much of the same things. The first one says, although in this case he says, canalization of developmental process in Eumetazoan lineages mean that the responsible upper level subcircuits, will be evolutionarily conserved in all descendants of the ancestor of that lineage. Now, how's there going to be any evolution if that's true? And I'm pretty sure the guy knew what he was talking about. He's an evolutionist, by the way, always was.
Okay, so I want to address that. So this is from a person that believes in evolution, and isn't in his conclusion for the first one. Furthermore, we can deduce that the outputs of the subcircuits must have been polyfunctional rather than finely divided and functionally divided as in modern group DGRNs. As a general result of these arguments is that considerations of evolutionary change in DGRN structure may at last provide a unified conceptual framework for understanding the stages of crown group evolution and the history of change that produces different hierarchical levels. Some things never changed, and a principle that must have been obtained in an early and a metazoan evolution is that developmental jobs are controlled to the logic outputs of genetic subcircuits. That's how evolution of the human body plan has occurred, is a question. Thus how the evolution of the animal body plan has occurred is a question. That, and in the end, can only be addressed in terms of transcriptional regulatory systems biology. So he's for evolution in this. Well, I'd just like to finish because there's the second one as well. No. I let you talk through all of it. I'd like to address the other one. Now, the other one is also in favor of evolution. Basically, its conclusion is a strong conclusion is the evolutionary process generating the genomic programs responsible for the developmental formulation of basic This word is beyond me. Etymozoan body plans was in many ways very different from evolutionary changes that can be observed at the species level in modern animals. And that's his conclusion for that one. But he's all in favor of evolution. So how do you explain that?
Well, I can explain it by him saying that the process that you talk about all the time, which would be random mutation, natural selection,
Mm-hmm.
he thinks that just can't possibly work. It has to be evolution in another way.
He's saying that?
And of course, now a lot of evolutionary biologists believe that same thing, by the way. Well, they would have to happen early on in the process. In other words, you don't have any evolution in the latter stages because of the lineage restrictions, the evolutionary constraints. So if there's going to be any evolution at all, it has to happen early on. Well, the problem there is you have to have all of these changes way back, and then boom, then nothing for a very, very long time. But even then, that violates what he saw in the embryos. So he really didn't know. He still believed in evolution, or if he didn't, he put on a good show. But he explains in his papers, if you read all, he's got a lot of papers out there, and they're all very good. He explains that he really doesn't know how it happened, but he still believes it was evolution.
Yeah, so in no way does he say that natural selection isn't a mechanism. He's going into how body plan development is simultaneously current. That's what he's going into. But he sort of says, here I enumerate some of the mechanistic consequences that follows the conclusion of the evolution of the body plan has occurred by alteration of the structure of developmental gene regulatory networks. He's not saying that evolution isn't a thing, and I think it's really dishonest to take somebody's paper, sort of cherry pick a couple of things that you don't really understand how they work in the paper, and then say he put on a good show if he wasn't an evolution believed in evolution.
Mark, I think it's dishonest for you to say I'm cherry picking.
That's exactly what it is.
I've read all the articles, and they all say the same thing, that the development of the embryo is really, really hard to change. I mean, really, you'd have to get unbelievably lucky.
Sure.
And he talks like that kind of luck is not available through random mutation, natural selection. And there he does say that. Let me just see if I can find which paper he says that in.
Well, while you're looking for that, so real quick, so Delta the Super Chat says, I have heterochromia. My right eye is blue and my left eye is brown. Would this be a beneficial mutation? Question for anybody.
Yeah, eye color isn't really, it provides you no real benefit unless for some reason heterochromia became super attractive or attractive, and then you would actually have sexual selection that somebody, people with heterochromia would get all the girls and leave some for the rest of us, kind of thing.
Some parts no, some parts not. For example, I think this is in Africa. If you're born with albinoism, which gives you white skin and blue eyes, witch doctors will kill you because they want to get they think you have some sort of magical properties.
Wow, that's a
little much. Listen, Bubblegum, only polytheist doctors who would think that you must be from their god's creation. That's
okay. Those guys are Satanists. Those aren't polytheists.
Oh, okay. So, quick, George says the DNA contains prescriptive info that can only come from a sender. It also contains decision-making algorithms that takes foresight, and forward planning requires a forward planner. That's a very good point. In any other context, that would be the immediate conclusion if you came across things that necessitated all of those factors in order to exist. I agree with 100% on that one, George. And but back to
I don't agree with that.
Actually, before we jump back to Dan and Mark, Slavic has joined us. What's up, man? Welcome to the stream. How you doing? What are your thoughts on tonight's debate? If you saw it, and if not, what's on your mind? And then we'll go back to Dan and Mark. Go ahead, Slavic.
I haven't actually seen the debate. You guys can hear me, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we're coming through.
All right. My headphones are acting up. Anyway, I haven't seen that debate. I was interested in specifically asking the question between Bubblegum and I'm not sure who the other guy was talking.
Probably.
But the reason I was interested is because the only way I think evolution could work is it has to only mutate the child before it's born. Because let's say I have like a, a black, one of those, what are they called? It's like on your skin, you have a tag or whatever they call it. It doesn't pass on to your children, even though that is technically a mutation on your skin. So how can, like, let's say that my arm got mutated somehow, let's say radiation, and there's some kind of cancer. We consider that cancer a mutation, even though it's a bad one. But let's say that a few cells got a little bit bigger in the heart, and it makes me a little bit more athletic. Those mutations can't pass on to your children. Just your heart is mutated, right? So the mutation would have to happen only in inside.
You're saying it has to be a germ line mutation, not a somatic.
Yeah, so what you have to consider is that the mutation can sort of happen in your reproductive cells, and that would get passed on.
Yes, that's the only thing. But then the problem with that is, how do you account? Because the way the child develops, right? It's such a, we're not even sure how the expression comes out to build the human. The cells are split.
You're saying so many of the things that might be considered beneficial in this context might be caused from an epigenetic perspective, not a germline heredity pass-on perspective. Therefore,
the reason is because then it doesn't matter how much environment, it can't affect. It only affects what survives, not exactly to make it beneficial. So you just have the luck of the draw if there's some kind of mutation. Like, we had a child we lost because she had a mutation that she had like fluid in her brain, and she passed away.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So yeah, the problem is that the mutation was not specific. It was like a random, mutation. They had some kind of name for it, whoever the guy that discovered it. But the thing is that it's a random mutation on the genome, but it's not a beneficial one. And how many children people have born so far, we haven't seen a beneficial, something that like makes you beneficial. Like, yes, there's recombination or whatever you want to call it, from the mother and the father, but we don't see the actual environment pushing the changes, but more like, I'm not even sure how would you guys explain that? Where does the mutation come from if it's not the environment directly affecting it?
Yeah, so the mutation's kind of random. It just throws things up. Sometimes rarely beneficial, but it happens, and detrimental. The beneficial ones are selected for. I think I'm a bit confused because you sort of said if you worked out in your heart, that's not mutation like we're talking about. It's sort of when the genome changes. You can have mutations in your own genes, but yeah, we're talking about germline mutations where, and even if you have a germline mutation in the sperm, it doesn't necessarily mean that the child will get it, because of course there's two genetic sequences that we've got here. We've got the egg and the sperm, and so it might not be carried on to the children. It's why you get people with dwarfism, for instance, and their parents are short and their children can be tall. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
So then the problem becomes the transmission of that to the whole population. Is there even enough time? Let's say there was some kind of beneficial mutation that, like, let's say that there was a hand that was 3-fingered, right? And some kind of random mutation happened that instead of 3 fingers, it copied the other finger a couple more times, and now you have a 5-finger, right?
Right.
Will that pass on to the full population quick enough, or will it just die out? So the chances, like, you would have to be like a statistician to figure out the amount of time we have on Earth, the billions of years of evolution, right? Do we have enough time to pass on all those mutations from the single cell to a human, or to even, let's say, any kind of animal, right? The amount of genetic anomalies that would have to be happening would be like insanely quick and passing on insanely quickly. but we don't really see that happening right now.
I don't think it's insanely quick. Sort of, if you're talking billions or 1.4 billion years odd, you're talking like, hundreds of millions of generations almost. Like, you're talking about a very, very long period of time. So the three-fingered thing, because that's good. So just say we have a three-fingered organism, and there's a five-fingered gene mutation in there somewhere, right? The mother, for instance, just a sake of argument, they have a whole bunch of kids. Now they might have some with 3 fingers and some with 5, right? And it is more. What happens is that those 5 fingers, just say they've got a massive advantage and survive having 5 fingers, they're a lot more dexterous, etc., etc. Now they will go on to marry other people, or have children with other people or other things, and they're going to produce children, some with 5 fingers and some with 3. And just as long as those 3-fingered organisms are not doing as well as the 5-fingered, eventually you will get to those 5-fingered people being the majority, the most people around, and at a certain point where it'll get fixed, it'll become a standard pattern for that organism. A really good example of this was in England, northern England, where they set up a whole bunch of coal plants. There was a moth that blended in with the trees. It was grey like the tree bark and mottled like the tree bark. Once these coal plants were set up, it turned all of the tree trunks black, and over many, many years, of course moths breed faster than humans, of course, there was a mutation for a black moth, and that black moth over 50 years or something it didn't eliminate the white ones, but it became much more prevalent. And then when they shut down the coal plants, it switched back to the white ones being more prevalent.
Okay, Mark, I'll have to correct you on that, though, because it's not a mutation which produces the black moth, right? It's not this new thing that showed up that only exists in a few of the moths. Rather, it was a sort of rare variation that already existed in a meaningful, somewhat significant percentage, like 10, 20, maybe 30% of the moths were already black. So while it was a lesser part of the population that became more dominant,
right?
You can't really say that it was a mutation that created it, right? Because in the case of a mutation, you would only have like a single family.
Well, why
which
wouldn't
would
the same
require
thing?
much more time to become dominant in a population?
Why wouldn't the same thing happen with even a lower population? What
Mark,
prevents
Mark,
it?
Mark, hang on. We need to clarify this, because Mark, you're seriously using a very outdated.
Yeah. Also, this example is kind of a scam.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff about how they actually conducted the experiment, which supposedly proved this. Is it your position that the black moth genetic data existed prior to, or only came into being post the building of the coal plant and trees getting blackened?
So I was just using it as a example of selection. I don't know how you can sort of go, well, it existed.
Because you specifically use the word mutation.
Okay. Well, at one point it was a mutation.
I'm going to make a point, and you can respond, okay? You hold the position, and correct me if I'm wrong on this when I get done, you hold the position that these changes and all this stuff result of mutations over time, and not the result of adaptation via pre-existing function. So in this context, did the black moths become the dominant color because of mutations and formation of new variation that is now being selected for based on environmental pressures? Or did it already exist prior to and just became the dominant one at the time based on the new environmental pressure? Which one?
So the scientists say that it was a mutation at some point in the past. That's what they say.
In the past.
Yeah.
So they're just inferring.
Okay, so it was
science is inference, Bubbles.
So it was a pre-existing function.
A pre-existing function. What, before the coal plants came?
Prior to the coal plant. Because, Mark, if you've actually read up on the moth argument, beyond the superficial BS that's spewed ad nauseum and has been for decades, Like this has been debunked for quite some time, right? So if it's a pre-existing function, right, that's presented as, see, this environmental pressure happened, and then there was a mutation, and then this became the dominant thing. This proves the new function comes from environmental pressures. Look what happened, right? This became the dominant. Natural selection just kicked in, and it just proves evolution beyond all doubt, right? But the thing that people forget is when coal stopped being the dominant, the white moths became the dominant color again.
Yeah, and why did they become the dominant color again?
Because it was a pre-existing function, and the advantage that had been in place based on the darkness that was brought forth and the camouflage that was formulated by the coal smoke was no longer the advantage, but the white moths already had to exist prior to the environmental change. Otherwise, they wouldn't now become the dominant color. And then if you went back to darkness again, it would be very logical to conclude that the black moths that existed prior to all of this happening would then become the dominant position. So does that substantiate evolution, or does that substantiate that pre-existing function enables adaptation to new environments? Which one?
It substantiates evolution. And that is the
No, it doesn't, Mark.
No, that's the functionality that
there was no mutation. They're just inferencing the mutation. They're inferencing. They're saying it happened, but they're actually demonstrating it happening. Do you get that?
Real quick. Let's go ahead and respond, and then Dan, I know you've been being very patient. You had the clarification on that paper, and then Donnie, I know he's had coffee and he's been very silent, so we need to get him back in the conversation. But go ahead, Sly, make your point, and then let's let Dan address the point he was making earlier about the paper, and then we'll get back to it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was trying to clarify. I use the finger analogy just to be as lenient toward evolution as possible, because it technically you already have a finger, so a duplication possible to like some kind of screw up, right? But let's say that it's a fish that has no legs and it has to grow, or let's say it has gills and needs to grow lungs. How in the world does that pressure of evolution? Because it's supposed to be, because you can't, like I said, in my mind, you cannot use evolution to pressure a change. You can only have random changes that survive. But let's say that you're halfway between something if you don't have, it's like a cancer. It'll kill you no matter what, unless it's fully developed, right? So how can that make it beneficial? If it's let's say a duplication, let's say it has an extra fin, it screws it up and grows an extra fin, and that's beneficial. Okay, I understand that. What happens if it's like it needs to live in the water and it needs to live outside the water? How in the world does it become a transitional?
Very slowly. It basically has more primitive structures in it. Like it may have a sort of bladder for keeping air in, and then it slowly changes over time.
Yeah, but it doesn't change. It would be like a cancer. It would be like, let's say that my hand, let's say that I worked in the mines, right? And me getting scratched up all the time on my elbow through my life, I would start getting calluses, right? But those calluses don't pass on to my children.
I don't know why they would. That's really weird to me, because that's not mutation.
But that's what you're saying. That's what you're saying is that
no,
the mutation
I'm not. That's not
is
mutation.
Getting pressured from the outside.
Yeah, I think you're really confused over what mutation is. Getting a cut and you have a scar doesn't affect your DNA. It doesn't change your DNA at all. I'm really confused as to why scratching your elbow would change your DNA.
So I was trying to be more.
Right now, I want to say this because John's right. I was silent. For beneficial mutations to accumulate in a population over time, leading to novel changes, the mutations have to occur in the germ cell lines in order for them to be passed on. So mutations in somatic cells, like an example of a somatic cell could be in your skin, we accumulate thousands of mutations in our somatic cells during our lifetime, which is one of the main reasons we die. But thankfully, most of those are not passed on. only the ones in the germ cell line, and not even all of those are passed on. Roughly 100 of those are passed on to the next generation, 50 from mom, 50 from dad. And hopefully for the evolutionists and for forward evolution to take place, every now and again, one of those needs to be beneficial, basically. So,
right. Technically, there's also
okay, guys.
interpretations, but those aren't mainstream anymore.
That's true. And it's making a little bit of a comeback, though. Dan, do you want to address your point from earlier?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks, John. This is from that first paper I mentioned, Evolutionary Bioscience as Regulatory Systems Biology. Excuse me. Now, he's talking about neo-Darwinism, and he says it's currently a proxy for study of evolution. But he says neo-Darwinism, Reid, erroneously assumes that change in protein coding sequence is the basic cause of change in developmental program. And it erroneously assumes that evolutionary change in body plan morphology occurs by a continuous process. All of these assumptions are basically counterfactual. This cannot be surprising since the neo-Darwinian synthesis from which these ideas stem was a pre-molecular biology concoction. He used that word, concoction, focused on population genetics and adaptation natural history, neither of which have any direct mechanistic import for the genomic regulatory systems that drive embryonic development of the body plan. Now, the way I interpret that is you can random mutation all day long, but unless there's it ties into somehow into the developmental gene regulatory system, it's bad. I mean, it may not be real bad, but they accumulate. It may not cause any super harm to the embryo, but it's not going to cause any new novel body parts either.
Yeah, so that's not what he's saying. He's just
that's exactly what he says.
No, that's
please.
not. I'll just finish. That's not what he's saying. There's a number of different opinions within biological evolution that sort of puts forwards these different types and how evolution happened. He is not saying evolution didn't happen. He actually gives sort of, if you go down in the paper, he gives 6 different aspects to how the solution to this problem is obtained. Transcriptional dynamics of developmental gene regulatory cascade. He's actually giving ways that he can overcome his own problems because he's honest. He's like, this entire paper is in support of evolution, not against it. And just because you sort of pick one thing out and say, hey, neo-Darwin, he says that neo-Darwinistic evolution has these problems, doesn't mean he's anti-evolution or saying that evolution didn't happen.
So Mark, are you
reading into that yourself?
In your positions, because the positions I hear you argue
Mark, my point
are neo-Darwinian.
I can't hear a thing.
I'm sorry, John. But that was my point all along, that what he's arguing has been neo-Darwinism all along. And I'm telling him, this guy says, that's a bunch of junk. That's nonsense. He says, he even called it concoction. Now, but he is an evolutionist, no doubt about it, and he gives some possible mechanisms that would cause this. But if you read his papers carefully, they have to happen way, way back. You can't have some late blooming human or something like that. They have to happen way, way back, or they're just not going to set.
No, he's just saying there's a different mechanism at work. That's all he's saying. And I think that you're reading into that.
Aren't you neo-Darwin?
I'm sorry?
Aren't you a neo-Darwinist?
No.
What are you, like a
original
Darwinist?
No, I think quantum evolution is probably where I would go.
Quantum Darwin?
Quantum, yeah.
Okay.
Because I mean, I'm not an evolutionary.
Okay, for people who don't know, I made this joke like a couple months ago.
Yeah.
That people would just shove the word quantum on anything to make it more scientific.
Well, why don't you look it up, Bubbles? Why don't you look it up?
So you saying quantum Darwinism?
Do you know what quantum means, Bubbles? Do you know what quantum means?
The prediction.
Sorry?
Small.
No, quantum means like a
the-
discrete quantity.
Yeah, it means it
So
can't
like
be
1,
reduced.
2, 3 would be quantum. As
Yeah,
opposed to
I don't,
one,
I
one,
don't
two,
100% know. I really, I'm not an evolutionary biologist. I just listen to what they say because they're the experts in the field. So, modern
Mark,
synthesis
you're the
could...
jack of all trades. You know you are.
No, I just like information, but I think that I just read what they say, and you know, I don't know enough to say, hey, it is modern synthesis. Well, if I could just finish just quickly, I'll just quickly finish. I don't know enough to say.
No way.
It is definitely modern synthesis, or it's punctuated equilibrium, or it's any of these other ones. I don't know enough to say that, right? It is not my field. I am simply saying that paper is not against evolution. That's all.
It's against neo-Darwinian evolution.
I never said he was against evolution. I told you he was a devout evolutionist, as far as I know, because he always supported it.
Or he was
But
putting
just
on a good
said
face.
Neo-Darwinism will not work. Oh,
Well,
wait, John,
what
I
if-
gotta go. I've run out of steam.
Well, what if?
Anyway,
Well,
sorry?
okay,
Go ahead, Dan.
hang on. So, Mark, have you ever read Icons of Evolution by Jonathan Wells?
I don't think so.
I think
No,
you
I
should
don't
read
think
it
so.
because
Absolutely.
the entire point of that book is to go through the fundamental, most common talking points that are used by evolutionists everywhere, i.e., things like the moth, and then just breaking each one of them down and showing why the way that they're used to supposedly prove evolution is just it's hilarious.
I'll look at it. I'll absolutely look at it. I promise. I've just googled it.
Hang on. I'm not done
Okay,
yet.
okay.
And I would wager if you would like take the time to go read it, you would be like, oh, so that's why John was giving me such a hard time about the people using the moth as an example to like somehow prove this point. It's hilarious how bad it is in
there's a
relation
lot
to
of
like everything about modern evolutionary theory. Like, no, it's just this is why we like so many of these talking points have just been obliterated for years. They're still put, and this is why, even though I don't agree with everything that like Ken Hovind says and stuff and the way he approaches things, it cracks me up how the like people claim that he's using the same talking points for 40 years, and it's like, well, he doesn't change his game plan. He just says the same thing over and over. It's like, yeah, because the people he debates keep using the same dumbass talking points that have been annihilated for decades.
Oh, come
on.
on.
Why does he need to? He doesn't need to change his talking points.
Come on.
Because the people on your side keep using the same talking points to supposedly defeat the position he's taking. It's
let's
like,
be honest.
Really? Ken Hovind thought that you needed two creatures with the same mutation to produce children with that mutation. You've got to be joking me. And his sort of thing of, elephants don't come from monkeys. That's not addressing anything that evolution actually says. I think that's a bit spurious. But this guy, I've just looked him up quickly. He's Jonathan Wells, an advocate of the pseudoscientific intelligent design from Discovery Institute. So this is a book, and I get that you're like pointing towards a book, but anyone can write a book. Why doesn't he go out and write a paper, submit that paper, overthrow evolution, and become famous and rake in the cash from overthrowing evolution?
You obviously didn't Google him, okay? I mean,
well, yeah, that's his Wikipedia entry. I don't know what to tell you.
He has a PhD from Yale, okay? So
And
PhD from Yale
and Berkeley.
And Berkeley, yeah. Where he has a PhD, he has dual PhDs, right? He has a PhD from Yale in religious studies. He has a PhD in molecular and cell biology from Berkeley. Okay, so he is published. Okay, prior to writing this book.
That's
but he doesn't believe he's related to a pine tree, John.
And Mark, you're gonna get to respond.
Okay.
But whether or not you disagree with his end conclusion, his position from an intelligent design perspective, if you are going to sit here and just like debunk him because, well, he believes in the pseudoscience of intelligent design, maybe you should read his book first.
I said I would.
And then actually find out if whether or not what he's saying has any substance to it.
I said I would.
And then go look at whether or not his peers have actually been countering the points that he's making in regards to like frickin' Moss and the arguments he makes inside of the book. Now, does everybody agree with all of his conclusions? No. But if you actually take the time to read it, and then you might actually recognize, and then you'd be like, the reason I'm bringing this up, Mark, is your reaction that you just had there was what I experienced so much with Evo atheists on YouTube, who never actually take the time to go read the counter arguments and then talk mad shit all the time about how the people who are making counter arguments don't know what the hell they're talking about, when they admit they don't actually know what the other side is actually arguing, because they never took the time to go read it for themselves. They're just told what to think because I'm not a biologist. I just say what they tell me to say. Versus, and it's the whole point that's being made by people like Wells is, we know what the other side is saying, and here's why we're calling them out and saying that they're wrong. So, like, how about you back up your BS?
Okay.
Is the point that the people like Wells is making.
Okay.
And magically, so many Evo atheists on YouTube are like, well, the Dover trial said, this judge said blah, blah, blah. Therefore, even though that was in like 2008, and he's not a PhD in all this stuff.
There were other trials.
That's what it was. We can just ignore every argument that's ever been made since then to negate the status quo from academia and the traditional positions. It's ridiculous. Anyway, go ahead. Respond.
So scientists have.
Can I got to leave. Okay.
All right. Well, goodbye, Bible research.
And then Mark, go ahead.
But I do want to put a little icing on that peppered moth thing. Jerry Coyne said. Talked about it, being presented in textbooks as a paradigm for natural selection and evolution. He says the re-examination of this tale, T-A-L-E, is the centerpiece of Michael Mazurek's book, Melanism, Evolution, and Action. Depressingly, Mazurek, I don't know how you pronounce his name, shows that this classic example is in bad shape, and while not yet ready for the glue factory, needs serious attention. That's Jerry Coyne now. He's about the most devout neo-Darwinist in the world. So anyway, I enjoyed it, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. You have a great night. Okay. All right, Mark.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I forgot where I was going with this. So a lot of scientists had a lot of big problems with this book, apparently. And anyone can write a book, as I've said. I think that the person that did the moth experiment said that he completely mischaracterized his experiment, which is not what you expect from, somebody publishing a science book.
Bro,
the person that it was based upon says it was totally misrepresented and misused his work.
Hey, the guy that did the moth experiment had a problem with it. Didn't he die? Like, wasn't that like 2.5 centuries ago?
What are you talking about?
No, it wasn't that long ago, John.
150 years ago. 150 years ago, wasn't it? Was he still alive to review it?
Well, if you're talking about from when the moths were originally seen, sort of what you call adapting to the power of the coal plants, that was a long time ago when that started. But somebody did experiments later with those peppered moths.
Right, but doing experiments later versus the example that's being used, that was way back then when you're doing the arguments that are being made in favor of the moths. Now, in the context of somebody else does an experiment later on, don't you already have the existence of both variations prior to somebody else doing an experiment later on? And
no, John, I'm pretty sure no one actually did like a live experiment. I think it was all done after that.
No, there was pretty sure there was one at the time too that was being done.
So I guess my point is that someone publishes a book and they basically say all of these things about the science that people have done, and those scientists come out and say, you have completely mischaracterized my work and misused my work in your book. That's not good, John. It's not good. I mean, weren't you involved in, like, you talked to Dr. J. Bundy and somebody told him that he didn't understand the papers that he himself wrote?
Okay, so I was in that conversation. I didn't say that.
Okay. Well, somebody said it.
Number two, for all the jackasses who made comments about that stuff, I had actually specifically referred to a 2020 paper, not a 2016 paper, which is what was being discussed at the time. And I also said, I'm going to go look for that paper while everybody else was talking. So for all the trash talkers out there who are too freaking stupid to actually pay attention and check stuff before they talk shit about me, maybe you should go rewind and find out, because I made that specific statement. And actually, I think it was later on, like an hour and a half later in the stream, I found the paper that I was referring to.
So
which was specifically about the follow-up experiments which had been done, not the 2016 paper, the 2020 review in relation to the mortality rates of the different classes that were different groups they were reviewing. Okay, so that's what I was referring to specifically.
But what
everybody else was saying is irrelevant to me, because I wasn't the one saying it, and I wasn't really paying attention because I was off looking at other stuff. Okay, so that whole deal, you can take that talking point and shove it where the sun don't shine, because you're proving that you don't actually pay attention before you start talking trash about me. Go ahead.
So have a look in the comments section. I just posted links and an explanation on it all.
Okay.
All right, I might head out. I might head out, but before I go, I want to say quantum evolution, that's a term I came up with as a joke. And to see evolutionists actually using that term, it's like secretly funny to me.
Bubblegum, quantum evolution is a term.
It is.
It is a term.
I came up with it as a joke.
No, you didn't.
I'm using it now.
There is
God, Bubbles.
Okay, they're not copying you, dude. They're not copying you.
Quantum has like a non-physical meaning, which just means like a discrete numeric quantity.
Okay, so I just want to quickly ask John, so you would acknowledge that Dr. J. Bundy knows way more about the experiments going on in the Lenski labs than you or anybody else on this panel?
I mean, I would think so theoretically, but the end conclusion about what actually defends the macro view of evolution, I mean, that's a totally different context. I mean, if he was arguing that the from a fitness in relation to the reproduction rate in the niche environment. And the whole point that everybody else was making, and the whole point that I was going for, which was substantiated by the 2020 paper, was that even in this little microcosm, you could see a better reproduction rate, which is the most generalized concept of fitness. The actual end result was that they were dying out the freaking wazoo and ultimately had higher mortality rates than the other ones.
Just posted a rebuttal to what he said in the live chat. Have a look. Links there. Rebuts it completely.
Well, see, the thing is, I'm going to believe someone
that was the
that's
point that
worked
I was
there.
making. Everybody else is arguing over like myopic little. Well, what's the formal definition of fitness in like the microcosm of the experiment? It's like I'm not going to argue that whole point. I'm arguing whether or not it actually does anything to showcase that. Evolution from a survivability perspective, like if you're more likely to die than live, from the macro view, does that actually prove the plausibility of evolution?
Well, that sort of sounds like you're sort of saying that you know more about it than the people who actually worked there and produced the papers on it, because they disagree with you completely.
What a tosser, John. Honestly, this guy's a...
Okay, no, look, here's the thing, though, right?
Mark,
wow.
Even if you know
hang on.
on a technical level, you can still miss a problem with it.
That's good, right? And again, Mark, apparently you're not listening, so pay close attention one more time, okay?
Right.
That night, what was being argued was the fitness results in the 2016 paper, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That was what was being argued over, not the point that I'm making and the point that I had initially made, which sparked the whole argument, and then other people brought up the 2016 paper, and then it went a whole deal. And I knew that wasn't the one that I was referring to, because I knew that the one that I was referring to was from 2020, not from 2016. So I state, I'm going to go find the paper. And then I shut up. You don't hear me talk for a long time. Okay? So the point you keep bringing up about, do you think that Bundy knows more about you and all this stuff?
Yeah.
I'm not questioning that in relation to what was being discussed at the time. Does that compute? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. It's just
okay, cool.
I don't think that you
I'm
really
glad you
have
understand
the
that.
background.
Okay, dude, if you continue to regurgitate this point about, do you think you know more than him, blah, blah, in
Oh, I'm
regards
not.
to
I'm
the
not.
fact
It just
that
sounds
I wasn't
like that.
arguing. I wasn't the one arguing at the time. And I was my whole point was substantiated by something completely different that wasn't what was being argued at the time. What relevance does your point in relation to me have to do with anything? Or are you just too dumb to grasp that? I know you're not that dumb. So are you being that stubborn? Which one?
No, I'm not being stubborn at all. It's just that I didn't remember. I must admit, Jay just told me about it, and I sort of watched it once. And I must admit, I skimmed it. I usually don't watch in
it's
depth.
amazing how often atheists just skim things and then
Well,
have
I mean,
fully concocted
I've only got so many hours in a day.
all these different things, but you see, it's called being able to back up your bullshit. Okay, it's the thing that I end a lot of my streams with. The difference between confidence and arrogance is being able to back up your bullshit. Okay.
Yeah.
So apparently, you. Here's the way I operate generally on online, right? In general in life. And I don't understand why more Evo atheists on YouTube don't do this, is for the most part, I don't take a dogmatic position unless I'm pretty darn sure I'm correct and have probably looked it up and made sure that I'm not way out to lunch on the position that I'm taking. But it's just fascinating how often individuals on YouTube, finally, when you drill them down, they're like, well, I just kind of skimmed, I actually didn't page, or they claim they watched something, and then I watched like 30 seconds. This is proven on a daily basis with the weather reports, with Speed of Pudding and the gang. They will go on these long-winded diatribes and literally play like 30 seconds of one of these streams. So hopefully Speed of Pudding is listening right now. Well, he's not listening to sleep. They'll do a transcript search to find interesting things to talk about. But if you go and watch their streams, it's hilarious because they watch like 30 seconds. And then very often I get huge amounts of humor because I know if they would they'll go on these long-winded diatribes about how horrible it is and how stupid it is, blah, 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 blah. It's like, dude, if you would have listened for like 45 more seconds, you would have realized how whatever you're talking about was completely addressed.
Did I say it was
on a daily basis? So, and congratulations, though. You are like channeling Speed of Pudding. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
So now that you're finished with that long-winded diatribe, I didn't actually. Did I actually say that it was you, or did I say someone from your channel? I don't know who it was. It may have been you.
Speed of cocaine.
I'm pretty sure you mentioned me.
I said I don't know if it was you. That's what I said. Do you want to rewind the tape and have a listen? Have a little, because you don't.
Not right now. Not right now. But the last time you said you wanted to rewind. You want to rewind the tape was last night.
And I'm happy to be corrected.
Editing of DNA. So you might want to not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be corrected, but as far as I know, I said somebody on this channel said this, and so I love that you say back up your bullshit, because the problem is that the creationist books that are out there and these papers, they don't back up their bullshit at all. No, they do not subject themselves to peer review.
How many have you read?
So in order to get around that, they've created their own
We've always
peer
got the
review
citations
process.
as references at the bottom, mate, on those creationist things, which evolutionists never look at. They never look at the references below it. They're so stupid. It's incredible.
So do you think putting references on something is peer review?
Everybody go on mute. Everybody go on mute.
Do you think putting references on something is peer review?
We're going to let Mark respond. First off, though, Mark, how many of these quote-unquote creationist books have you read? And give me a couple specific ones you have read from cover to cover.
A couple. I read a couple of things that were given to me, like the I can't remember what's the name. I've got it.
So it's been a couple. You only have to remember one or two books, and you can't remember them.
Yeah, I usually don't bother reading stuff that is, not peer reviewed and stuff. I've read a lot of papers.
Okay. So let's think about this. So you say not peer reviewed. So have you read?
I haven't. I haven't read a lot of alien books or Bigfoot books either.
Hang on.
Does that mean I'm not qualified to talk on it?
Mark, let's think about this logically. This is on a topic you debate on a regular basis, and you claim that the opponent's evidence and arguments are completely invalid, right?
Yeah.
So, have you read any Stephen Myers books, as an example?
Yes, Stephen Myers. Yeah, I think so. I think.
Okay, which one?
I can't remember. I was given a couple of books by somebody, and I've got them around here somewhere. I must have.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're observing complete and utter bovine scatology right now. Mark is full of shit right now.
Well, I can't remember the names of the authors.
You think?
Okay, let's assume
they're pretty damn substantive.
Okay, stop.
But he's sure that they're all wrong, but he thinks he's read them.
Let's
Mark,
assume.
Read them,
let's assume I've read none. Okay, let's assume I've read none.
Doubt you read them because they're extraordinarily substantive. They go into exquisite amounts of detail, and they both make arguments. And there's whole sections where they address the standard talking points from people like you, okay, and directly address them in great detail. Okay?
Yeah.
So if you'd actually read them, you would know you had read them. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
So
okay?
the reason...
So don't be full of crap, okay? Number one. Number two, in regards to peer review, the reason I brought up Stephen Meyer is there have been direct responses from his peers on the books, okay? Some negative, others, well, we don't agree with the end conclusion, but he makes good arguments, okay? This is from all sorts of individuals, right, on your side of the equation. There's been articles about some of his papers in Nature, okay? So, but I'm guessing you are full of crap as usual and haven't actually read any of this stuff.
Thanks for that.
So has anything come to mind yet about a book that you know you've read, and what was it about?
Yeah, let's say that I've read none at all, because I honestly cannot remember the names, and I probably can't find them anyway. The one that, well, let's just say I've read none at all. The reason why I don't count books as very, very good evidence is because anybody can literally write a book and put it out there. It means absolutely zero. There's books on aliens, there's books on Bigfoot, there's books
zero,
on all
but
kinds
all
of
the
things.
citations and all the references and everything they give in there and the great detail they give means nothing.
They
give both sides of the argument, whereas you guys never give both sides of the argument. They give both sides and they rebut it. And you have not read it, and you've got no idea, mate. You're full of it.
Chill. Yeah, so the reason why I read papers is because it's been through a peer review process, and so when you are looking into science, you only go through that process.
Jason, stay silent. Let's let him
chill for a second.
Sorry.
Yeah, so it goes through a peer review process where the methodology of just reading books you find anywhere and just believing them is not a very good process for finding the truth. What you want to do is come up with a methodology that has been reviewed and judged good by the people in the community. So you've just presented a book of some guy that can't back up his bullshit, because the people doing the things that he is talking about and the experiments that he is talking about, and he directly quotes, say, you've misquoted me, you've misused my work. That is incredibly dishonest. So in fact, it is Jonathan Wells that can't back up his bullshit. I'm just reading through where actual scientists, real scientists, in the evolutionary sphere are basically saying that this is a constant thing that where was he from? Discovery Institute is using, and he has absolutely misrepresented these people, which is deceptive, dishonest, and probably the reason why this man doesn't work in mainstream academia.
Absolutely, Marky Mark. Absolutely. You don't think that any scientist has ever been butthurt if they get called out for being full of shit? Oh wait, they do, and they throw big hissy fits and whatnot. Okay, so case in point, right?
Conspiracy.
A professor at Vanderbilt University a couple months ago. Well, actually, it was like a year and a half ago. They got hired to review a major study that was considered like a standard, a baseline in Alzheimer's research, right? And he went through it because there were some suspicions about it. And he got hired by this group to hey, will you please do a review for us as an expert? So he starts going through it, and he sees I think that they literally photo altered stuff from their experiments that supposedly proved their position. And then they hired more photo experts on all that kind of stuff. And they came in and did a full scale analysis. And they're like, yep, pretty darn sure. This is straight up photoshopped out the wazoo in terms of the quote unquote proof of all their research and whatnot. So a couple, maybe a month and a half ago now, the whole story broke and whatnot. And finally they had to cave and admit that they had modified all this data, and this thing that had been a foundation for all this ongoing work And who knows how many millions, if not billions of dollars have been spent since then on trying to find a cure for Alzheimer's based on this research has been like completely KO'd. And you don't think in that context there's pushback to, well, we weren't, because initially they tried to talk a big freaking game that none of this was not true and blah, blah, blah. And then finally when it was like, well, look, here's what, like, you're full of crap. They finally had to cave. Okay. So, but that was hyper peer reviewed. There's billions of dollars being invested on this, on the substance of this peer reviewed paper. So in the context of inferences on evolutionary biology, where all this stuff that happened in the past and can't actually be proven one way or the other, you just have to, ultimately come down, well, I think this is the way it must have happened. You don't think there's a heck of a lot of opportunity for amalgamation of like inferences? Come on now.
Yeah, really? No, I think that the amount of...
Are you actually that naive?
I think the amount of people that is writing on this... You mentioned Jerry Coyne, who's actually an intelligent design proponent. He wrote that icons of evolution, rests entirely on a flawed syllogism. And that is the textbooks to illustrate evolution for examples. These examples from the textbooks he presented in incorrect or misleading ways. So even intelligent design people thought he was dishonest. Patricia Princehouse, professor at Case Western Reserve University, testified that Icons was full of fraudulent representations of materials in science books, and intelligent design scientists agreed. So when you say you can't back up your bullshit... Are you talking about
intelligent design scientists who are theistic evolutionists, by the way? I just wanted to know that.
I did call him a scientist. I don't know why you didn't.
Hang on. Donnie, are you with us? Donnie, are you still with us?
No. SFT still there?
Well, you know what? I think I will leave it there. It's 2 o'clock, so I want to...
Mark, I want to make sure I don't misrepresent you.
Okay.
Did you say that Jerry Coyne is an intelligent design advocate?
I believe so. Isn't he?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Dude, he's a Darwinist. Like, he was an active proponent of censoring intelligent design. He recently, I think he conceded finally that it could be potentially viewed as quote unquote science. But
yeah, he literally runs the Why Evolution is True blog.
Okay. Well, I've obviously got the wrong guy then.
So Mark, I guess this again proves my point that you, like TJump, don't actually go and look beyond the surface level for your dogma. Like, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but
no.
I think I'm gonna make an assessment of you, Mark. Do you trust academia and consensus to the extent that arguments against are invalid on their face because they disagree with consensus?
I think that if you are going to argue with scientific consensus, then you need to present your methodology which gets better results than science.
That gets better.
How many times have you presented it tonight, John? I mean, honestly, how many times have you said to this guy, and he's not brought up one point from one book saying that where it's wrong? In the books, they present the citations, the secular citations that they're rebutting. They present them. They give them in the books, and then they give the explanation. Then they give the first they give the evolutionist side, then they rebut it, and then they give the citation. I mean, how much more honest can you be than that? This guy is the most dishonest person that I've ever heard in my life.
Dear.
He has not presented one citation, has not presented one explanation as why the books are wrong. He's not picked out one single point. He just sits there blowharding at his ass the whole time, mate. He's full of shit.
Thank you for that. Actually, I brought up, I quoted from the papers that I was presented with as a counter to evolution by biblical tools. And actually, so when I'm talking... Right.
Small area where a bunch of theistic evolutionists
when somebody brings out a paper, I quoted from that paper that he brought up that supports evolution. The reason why I'm not bringing up books is because anybody can write a book. It has. I can write.
Have you been posting the citations while you've been crapping on about this? Have you posted one citation yet that to back anything you've said? Have you? No.
I mean, I can give you papers
right
that
now.
I was
Secular
given.
citations. Do you want me to post them? Do you want me to start posting them in the live chat? I
Why
can just hang
are
up
you
right
mad?
now and start posting all the citations, the secular ones.
How Jason is, don't worry about it.
Why are you mad?
So Mark,
He's not
do
mad.
you,
He
do
sounds
you,
mad.
Have you read any of Richard Dawkins?
Yes.
Okay, so have I. Were his books peer reviewed?
No.
Do you think that there is substantive arguments in Richard Dawkins' books?
I think they're a good read, but I don't think I would take them as a prima facie evidence for evolution.
Well, no, but it's a cumulative case from his perspective, right?
Well, I mean, if you can go back and find the papers that he has referenced, and he, I mean, if I was in a vacuum and came across his book, I would not believe just what's in there. I think you would have to go back, look up the papers, and see the evidence that actually shows that they are true.
Okay, but we're not saying for you to believe like everything in every book you read.
No, I understand that, but
what I'm saying, here's my point I'm making, Mark, is I have read, I think all but one of Dawkins' books.
Right. Okay, great.
I've read a plethora of books from the opposition. Like right now, I'm reading Nick Lane's latest book on abiogenesis. I've got his last one. I've got Jeremy England's book on abiogenesis. I've got a whole bunch of them, right? I go and read what the opposition says, and to my perspective, because I want to see the substance of their arguments, make sure that I am not missing out on something, and if I'm wrong, ultimately be able to be like, okay, I'm in my current position, modify it. Because I try to keep an open mind about my position that I go debating and having discussions with. But per your own admission, you don't even want to know what the other side's arguments are and what and the substantive evidence in favor or against their positions. You don't even want to go and read the citations and find out if there's actually substance to it. You want to just be told, oh, well, these guys who are on my side claim that, oh, these guys, what these arguments are just complete crap.
Yeah,
okay, so
because I study science, not bullshit.
Dude, okay, so
that's
you're
why.
Again, you're proving my entire point that anything that disagrees with consensus must be bullshit by default.
No,
is your perspective.
No,
yes,
but we have a methodology that produces the best results, and that is by putting it through the scientific method. If you have, I've been asking all night, if you have a better method for finding the truth, give it to me. But what you're not saying, John, is that, hey, a better method for finding the truth is read the books of your opposition, read the books of what you see, and then decide on which one you like, because that's the one you like. That is not a very good methodology. You are not going to find the truth through that. Give me a better methodology. Give it to me.
Mark, methodology?
Yeah.
I'm not questioning the scientific method. We're talking about whether or not the starting point assumptions are correct. Whether or not evolution and only natural process is the only thing that must be accounted for in the starting point, or if there is something else that's necessary prior to everything else happening.
What do you mean by starting point? I'm sorry, I don't understand that. What do you mean by starting point assumptions?
Okay, this is the... Okay.
Mark, whenever you
this is the whole point in the
you have to have some things at the start, obviously, right? You can't just start from nothing and create a paper. You have to have some things you already know which inform that.
Yeah.
Which inform your research in some way.
So methodological naturalism has a certain criteria that it must fulfill. John, did you ever find out the difference between methodological naturalism and ontological naturalism?
Yeah, I already did, buddy. And I'm actually kind of
glad
that you're bringing that up. So you're talking about that there is... Okay, so ontological naturalism, right, is all about the metaphysics, right? And the view that the supernatural doesn't exist, right?
Correct. Yes. Correct.
Okay, cool. So that's all about strong atheism, right, from the philosophical perspective, right? Methodological naturalism has a more limited view, which is what I said last night, by the way, that the supernatural cannot and should not be used in the scientific methods. Okay.
No, that's not what you
Yes.
said. You said that it precludes from concluding that the supernatural.
No, dude, no, Mark, you probably were not listening again last night because I
specifically
was talking about. Hey, Mark, listen. I specifically referred to, and remember me saying this is literally written down as the start, as how things should be done in academia and in science. That you have to exclude everything that is not purely naturalistic methods. Did I not say that?
Not to my knowledge. You said it can't
really?
conclude. Yeah. So
really, I didn't say. Okay.
All right. I could be wrong. I could be wrong again. Okay,
Mark,
I could be wrong.
Dude, you honestly, bro, I know specifically that I said that. Are you actually this full of shit?
You're getting a little shrill
seriously.
there, mate.
Dude, because you fascinate me, bro. Because either
really
you're a stone cold lying SOB on purpose, or
no,
you have the memory of a gerbil. Because
yes,
this was
so thanks for that.
Night.
Thanks for that. To the best of my understanding, methodological naturalism has religion and supernatural has no influence over it, and that's all. It can still arrive at a conclusion of the supernatural, unlike ontological naturalism, which necessitates there is no supernatural things. But so you're complaining that the supernatural, starting with an assumption of the supernatural, it could be ghosts or sort of supernatural monsters, should be allowed into science. Is that what you're saying? Or do you agree with science that it should preclude?
Mark, seriously, bro, don't try and play stupid right now, okay? Because you know my position, which is an intelligent agent, not some random freaking ghost. Or
so that's not science.
Farting pixies and parrot. No, listen carefully.
So that's not science.
In terms of Mark, shut your mouth. In the context of the starting assumptions, okay?
Yeah.
Your position is that science needs to exclude the possibility that a intelligent agent would be a starting point necessity. Am I correct or incorrect?
Exclude the possibility. No, it doesn't exclude the possibility. It just excludes the supernatural because it can't use the
naturalism. Literally,
it can't
the supernatural and says that only
no, wait, you just changed. You just moved the goalpost.
No,
you said excludes the possibility, which means that it excludes that the reason found can be supernatural, which it does not do. It only excludes it from the methodology. It does not exclude it from the conclusion.
You're such a freaking hyper-literalist dumbass. Okay, can't be used. Is that the same as exclude the possibility?
No.
Can't be used.
Yeah.
Can't be used.
Yes.
Okay, if you can't even use it to
reach
a conclusion,
so I'll explain.
Then by default, it's not a possibility.
I'll explain.
You can never consider it. If you can't, Mark.
No.
Mark, seriously, dude, you're on mute again.
I think Mark's point is you can't start with it.
This is astonishing how stupidly myopic and childlike you're being right now. I mean, seriously. Be an adult. Act like a freaking grown-ass adult with an IQ above a gerbil. Seriously. Can't be used. If something is excluded from a method, okay, then by definition, you can't consider the possibility that would be the explanation and still be inside the rules of the method. Are you actually this dumb? Seriously?
I'm not dumb at all, and, thanks for the insults and everything, John. I won't interrupt your tantrum there, but
what's good, yo?
So when you say exclude the possibility, it means that you cannot reach this conclusion. You're excluding it completely as any possible explanation. What science says is that you can't use it as a method. You can't start with that and incorporate it into your experiments. It has to lead through natural steps to that conclusion.
That's what I've said. I've said that over and over and over again, Mark. Do you not listen to a word? Do you not listen to a word?
I did, yeah. I wrote it down even.
Okay. Really? Because I've made that point. The point that you just made, I have made that point over and over and over again.
You said exclude the possibility.
Oh my, dude, you have I have used that and many other things. I've been trying to paint a bigger picture for your small mind to grasp, and use multiple explanations.
Thanks for that. It's lovely.
How the whole point that I'm making, because you keep having an inability to comprehend the point that's been made.
No, I comprehend. When you
No,
say
no,
exclude the possibility, you're sort of saying that there is no possibility that the scientific method can find God as the conclusion. That's what it says. But that's not what the scientific method does. All it does is say you cannot start with any assumption. Yeah, so
This is the starting point. The whole argument about this has been the starting point. The starting point of methodological naturalism. I have made that point in terms of what is allowed to be the starting point over and over and over again. Okay, whether or not through the methodological naturalism, or you might end up being able to find the evidence for the supernatural, is not the point. We're talking about the mental starting point. Okay, the starting point of what is appropriate and acceptable inside of research being done inside of methodological naturalism. Do you think that a scientist right now under the current paradigm is going to be able to get massive amounts of acceptance if, even though they're going to, hey, I'm going to follow the methodological naturalism, if they publish, I have just in their abstract, right? It's, I believe that because there is a supernatural force that is the creator of the universe, that I am now going to do X, Y, Z. That will get laughed out of the room.
Can I just quickly say this?
Hang on.
Okay.
Hang on. And if you don't think that's the case, then I don't know what world you live in. Okay? Now, can you, I'm gonna take you off mute. Do you accept or reject that the point I've been making over and over and over again for 2 different nights now is that the starting point of methodological naturalism does not allow for the supernatural being the starting assumption? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do agree that it doesn't allow that any supernatural, not just one thing, any supernatural
awesome. Well,
thing.
I'm glad we've been able to
could I finish?
Now I'm gonna
shut up
and let you in a second.
Why are you censoring me?
I'm glad you've been able to concede that. So Mark, we have now
you sort of censored me.
We have
now
wasted
me.
Okay, so I'm going to let you talk in a moment, Mark. You're backstage. I will let you back in a second, and you're going to be able to talk uninterrupted. Now, I have just wasted, and the audience has just wasted, at least 15 minutes to get you to finally concede a point that I have been repeating over and over and over again, while you claim that's not the point that I've been making and not my starting assumption. Like, this is ridiculous. Mark, you can't be this dumb. Either you're a jackass or you're playing dumb. It's amazing. Now, Mark, if you whine now you're going to whine over here in side chat like a child. When I tell you I'm going to let you back in. So, hey, TJ, put yourself on mute, buddy. There's major noise coming through. Now, Mark, I'm about to let you back in. You're going to be able to talk uninterrupted. Nobody interrupt him. Okay. But we wasted 15 minutes to get around to this point where you finally conceded the point I've been making over and over and over again. All right, go ahead.
Oh, my bad.
Yes. So I didn't actually concede it. I just said it is true that science doesn't allow a supernatural to start at a supernatural, but you sort of said it excludes the possibility, and that's not true. It doesn't exclude any possibility at all, is what I was trying to say. It just leads to